Game of Thrones Revolution. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 51 Night Talk, Part 1 Late Night Shifts. Sid was on the first shift. Beside the blazing bonfire, he found a large rock and hid himself as a secret sentry. The sky was dark purple and full of stars, but he didn't recognize any of them. Once upon a time, in a high-tech world, he controlled most of the sky. Now when he recalled it, it seemed like it happened yesterday. In the past, he always thought that in the endless sea of stars, the vast star clusters that were billions of light years away were the limit of the world. The real world seemed to be far more complex and profound than he knew. He kicked a stone in his small steps and returned to reality from his memories. The little devil ran over, twisting and turning, and struggled to find a place to sit next to him. Do you always like to be that high? Someone told me that it's easier to become a target at high places. The little devil complained, and took his wineskin and took a sip in a familiar manner. Heights have their own advantages, the only problem is that people can't always stay alert. Inadvertently miss the opportunity to discover the enemy. I don't have this problem, so the higher the better. He didn't care about the little devil's sharing behavior, and took a sip of wine. The rich aroma of wine exuded a bitter taste. This is the taste of mood. He realized that he shouldn't recall the past, which would not do him any good. If I hadn't seen all your magical qualities, I would definitely classify you as a liar, the lowest kind. The little devil imitated him and looked up at the stars. You know what? I've been waiting for this moment for a long time. He lowered his vision and confirmed that it was only the eyes of the mountain cat that reflected the light of the campfire not far away. It sounds like a confession to a girl. Either there is something wrong with your eyes or you have a special hobby. The little demon moved his body and moved further away from him. Let me tell you in advance, I like girls. He chuckled and shook his head. It's really hard to find a chance to communicate with you calmly. He handed the wineskin over. The little demon shook his head and looked away. Don't get me wrong. I'm not interested in you. I need your help. Help. His eyes kept flashing. You can split rocks with a sword and smash people's heads with your bare hands. I can't think of anything a dwarf can do to help you. The shrill voice made people frown. Tyrion Lannister, listen carefully. Your life is in danger. If I don't intervene to remedy the situation, you may die silently on the way to the Vale of Arryn, or at the moon gate of the Eyrie, or in this deep mountain. And it's the kind of death you least want. Are you threatening me? No, I'm telling you the truth. He was a little anxious. It's always like this. Whenever I have to explain something to someone, I find that some things can only be understood, not expressed in words. It's hard to understand, but the facts are in front of us. The world is sick because a certain god doesn't want things to continue. He uses all kinds of coincidences and people to prevent the rules of the world from playing their due role, so that the humans in this world are trapped in a permanent cage. The little devil touched his nose. You want me to believe that you are an angel who saves us poor people? No, on the contrary, I am closer to the devil, but I am still a human being. He spoke quickly and had to speak quickly. He had to convince the little devil before he made a judgment. There are many things in this world that are beyond your imagination, including gods, demons, and dragons, but I can assure you that most of the mysteries are malicious, including gods and demons. What I have to do is to weaken their influence and restore the world to its original state while these guys are not paying attention. That sounds good. The little devil's expression didn't look like he believed him. As a poor dwarf abandoned by the gods, I hope to become as handsome as my brother James. Can you help me realize it? I can make you what you want to be, he said seriously, but you need to pay a price. Well, now you look more like a devil. The little devil stretched out his arms. Maybe it's fantasy, but it's true. I can't accurately tell you every detail of what you will experience in the future, but I can grasp the general direction of development, which means I can predict the fate of most people. He looked at the little devil, trying to make him look into his eyes as much as possible. God doesn't bypass anyone, he is not merciful, and he won't think about you. Your fate has long been determined by him, and your life will go on and on. This world is a hell with no beginning and no end. Everyone is kept in the dark, following the predetermined fate to repeat the pain, failure and even death again and again. In this world, humans have no freedom, including the fairest death, which does not belong to you. The light of wisdom flashed in his eyes. I don't understand, it sounds like you are going against fate. But your behavior seems to maintain the fate you despise. Since you said that I was destined to go to the eagle's nest and fall from the moon gate, why don't you chop me off now? Wouldn't that break the predetermined fate? Then the wheel of history will stop, the endless cycle of thousands of years will end, and everything will return to chaos. The world will be shaken by overly drastic changes. Perhaps mankind will be destroyed, and even the sky and the earth you see will cease to exist in a short time. He sighed, I am not a god, and I do not have the power to create the world. Once that happens, I can only watch the destruction of billions of lives, and I will be excluded from the dead world. The little devil seemed to want to confirm that this was just a malicious joke. He looked at Sig carefully. If you are joking, you must be the best actor in the world. He looked up at the sky. Do you want to secretly accomplish your goal and break the intervention of God? Sig likes to teach smart people, so he can't save words. It's difficult to explain in detail, but this is the general meaning. Can you tell me about my current situation? Am I extremely dangerous? Based on what you see in my fate, how long will it take for me to die? You are in danger now, but not because of fate, but because of me. Due to my existence and my previous actions, the path of world history is divergent. He patted the little devil on the shoulder and handed over the wineskin. This time the little devil drank it. Originally, you would have experienced many tragic things and many dangerous things and finally survived, but the people you care about and the people you love are not so lucky. In the end, you will die of old age in a situation completely different from the current situation, alone. The little devil tilted his head curiously, his serious expression looked like a joke. Now, what about me, your so-called differentiated fate? Die in the Vale of Orend. You have many endings, and your future is not very certain for the time being. You may die here, or you may continue to live, but I have seen an interesting ending. You stand next to the Iron Throne and assist the new generation of kings. That sounds good. I hope it's a queen. Not my sister. The little devil teased. It's a girl. She has silver hair and purple eyes. She is petite and beautiful, but very young, maybe not even born yet. You're teaching her about the throne. It sounds very heartwarming. The imp returned the wineskin to him. I still can't believe what you said, but I understand the reason behind your strange behavior. He jumped off the rock. I'm going to sleep now. I hope that in the future I can become the hand of the king as you said, and teach the beautiful and lovely Targaryen queen. By the way, that girl isn't your sister, right? I remember her name is Dawnie. It's a pity it's not her. So far, in my predictions, Dawnie's ending has not been good. I hope that things will change in the future. He said frankly. The little devil looked at him blankly. Now I believe you are not Viserys. One last question, if your goal is achieved, will you stay here? No, I will still be excluded by the world and go to other worlds. He shrugged. Anyway, every time I arrive at a place, it is at hell on earth until I break it, and the whole world is in a cycle. May the gods bless you. Oh, I forgot, you hate the gods. The little devil staggered back to the camp, and Sig looked back at the sky. It was time for the shift, and Joffrey came to sit next to him. He retracted his gaze. You are not the first person to sit next to me today. It seems that everyone has a lot to talk about. The young prince frowned. I don't know, too much happened yesterday, I can't understand. Are you really Viserys Targaryen? Joffrey was very nervous, his eyes wandered, and his fists clenched. Yes and no. He opened his palm and placed it in front of the campfire to observe. This body belongs to Viserys, but there's another person inside. As for whether I am sick, it doesn't matter. Maybe I have forgotten what my previous name was and only remember this name. Joffrey glanced at him secretly. You're not your father's enemy, are you? Do you want to take back the throne? Although the throne belonged to you more than a decade ago. His question was more like expectation. Joffrey kept clenching and unclenching his fists, his palms crystal clear. Chapter 52 Night Talk, Part 2 Joffrey was very nervous, and he knew Sigurd saw through it. The problem was that the prince's pride made him at a loss. It took him a long time to sort out his feelings. Let's change seats. Sigurd smiled brightly. Even though he had the silver of his long hair and those purple eyes, he was still as handsome and domineering. I want to talk. He hated his cowardice and incompetence. He could obviously be more arrogant, but why was he so panicked in front of him, the person who should have belonged to the remnant of the Targaryen family? He understood his thoughts. Joffrey realized this, and even if he was just thinking, Sigurd's expression was changing in line with his own mood. It's okay, this is not cowardice. Sig said as he changed positions, the fact that you are willing to come and talk to me shows that you are brave. You feel my strength, so you are cautious. This is all thanks to Violet. I didn't expect she could save you. The tension disappeared. It was unbelievable. Huh? Joffrey exhaled. Why did she save me? Shaking his head, he felt that he was already incoherent. I mean, I will die, right? Sig's eyes were gentle, and he patted his shoulder. Your understanding is even better than that of the little devil. He frowned. I don't understand. That guy is really that powerful. You seem to value him so much. He's just a dwarf. Finally saying what was in his heart, he felt that it was really low level. Violet would definitely not look down on people because of their disability. You're quite courageous. Sig stared at him with disinterest. Violet is also disabled. Do you think she is low class? This guy must be peeking into my mind, Joffrey was sure. I can read people's minds, but I don't need to do it. At least for you, everything is written on your face, so there's no need to bother. The two were silent and awkward. Joffrey wanted to take the wine, but Sig dodged him. You are still underage. Drink less and think more. The little devil is strong because he is always thinking and reading. Even if he has a disability, what does it matter? Are you really a god? Sig shook his head with disdain on his face. Joffrey suddenly realized that this person despised God. Demon. Ha ha ha. Sig laughed softly. Of course not. I know a few self-righteous demon kings. As for their strength, he smacked his lips. It's better to hear about them than to meet them in person. Sig spat into the mud. He no longer felt the nervousness he had felt before, as if he too was despising the existence of gods and demons. I hope you really are that kind of magical being. Life would be much more interesting that way. Don't worry, little one. Life will be so interesting that it'll make you want to vomit. Sig shrugged helplessly. You just asked if you will die. I tell you, yes. Before you met Violet, you might have been able to become king, but you wouldn't have been able to do it for many days. You died because you were stupid, do you understand? Sig's eyes became stern. He shrank his neck and felt a gust of cool wind blowing into his collar. I don't understand. I'm Prince, the legitimate heir to the throne. Why would someone want me dead? There are always people who want the king dead, and there are always people who want to sit on that iron chair themselves. Sig seemed to be wearing a mask. The difference is that a smart king can always find people to help him, find many people to help him, so that he has more chances to live, while a stupid king can only rely on himself. People have limited energy. If everyone in the country is thinking about the king and wants him dead, then he is not far from death. Are you telling me that the righteous will have many supporters? Joffrey remembered that Grand Maester Pycelle had taught him, but he didn't believe the old man's nonsense. Ha, you don't believe it. Joffrey nodded with difficulty. He must be hopeless, even though he had made it so clear. You are smart and have a high level of understanding. To his surprise, Sig actually nodded in agreement. That statement is bullshit. Remember my tone, bullshit, there is no better explanation. If you really believe in the so-called the longer you live, you will die faster. He suddenly found it very interesting. No one would ever say Sig's point of view openly. The correct statement is that those who are good at investigating people's hearts have many supporters, those who are good at disguising themselves have many supporters, and they have to be ruthless in private. Is my father a good king? As he expected, Sig shook his head. He is too confident and not good at disguising himself. Although he is ruthless enough, few people really agree with him. The only trustworthy Duke Stark is unwilling to stay with him. Will he die? Just spitting out the word death has consumed a lot of Joffrey's energy. Who would be so bold as to want to kill father? No one can kill him. He is the greatest warrior in the Seven Kingdoms. Your brother, however, also fought under his hammer. Sigurd lowered his eyes. Rhaegar was a bastard, but he had more merits. Rhaegar's death was an anomaly. It is the guards who are the bastards who do not play by the rules. Joffrey was surprised. The fearless Sigurd seemed to be hiding something. He was deliberately avoiding something. You must be wondering what happened to me. Sig said to himself without waiting for his answer. I am deliberately hiding my emotions. If I really let them out, the world may sense the abnormality and exclude me. Excluded. Will you die? He shook his head. I won't die, but I am no different from dead you. I will never come back. Joffrey stood up and stretched, but Sig pulled him down. Don't do this unless you are absolutely sure it is safe. After he nodded, Sig let the rod. Come on, if I were a bandit, I would first consider killing the sentinel. Sig ran to sleep by the campfire. Joffrey suddenly felt cold all over. He shrank his body and tried to look in the direction where he felt danger. The forest was dark, and something was moving in it. Feeling like he was being watched, he moved his body to let more rock shadows cover him. The nearby stream gurgled and it seemed that someone was stepping on the water. He held his breath and concentrated. The wind whistled and intermittent shots came into his ears. Could it be that the bandits were gathering? He stuck his head out in confusion. The valley was dead silent in the dark night. He couldn't tell whether those feelings really existed. Lonely, scared and terrified, he tightly gripped the hilt of his sword. It turned out to be so terrifying to stand alone at night. He thought of Winterfell. The bastard of the Stark family was said to have asked to join the Night's Watch at the Wall. It was said that the other side of the wall was the end of the world. It was more terrifying than the Vale of Arryn. The cold iron gloves pressed on his shoulders, and he resisted screaming. "It's my turn. Go to bed." The Hound's face looked even more terrifying under the reflection of the campfire. Joffrey had questions in his heart, and he felt like he had to say them. "Sit down and let's talk." The Hound sat down. He was very tall. When he sat, he felt like a huge rock leaning against him. "There's nothing to talk about. I'm your guard and I'll keep you safe. Do you believe him?" Joffrey pointed to the man's direction with his eyes, fearing that calling his name or looking at him would arouse vigilance. The Hound shook his head. "I don't care who he is or what he wants to do. As long as it doesn't affect your safety, his purpose doesn't matter." This was the first time the two had such a deep conversation. In the past, Joffrey never cared about the Hound's thoughts. He was just a dog. "Aren't you angry? Why do you accept it calmly? I mean, I often call you a dog or our dog. Most people would be angry. Even slaves don't want to be called that, let alone you're not a slave." The Hound stared at him for a long time. "You have really changed. You didn't ask these questions before." The Hound looked into the distance and stubbornly completed his sentry duties. From this angle, Joffrey seemed to be looking at a piece of ice. "Wake up everyone, they are coming." The Hound roared. Joffrey almost fell off the rock. When he stumbled to wake up his companions by the campfire, the Hound had already drawn his sword and rode into the bushes not far away. The sound of bones and flesh being torn apart was heard, followed by screams. The quiet night was instantly stained with a touch of blood. Chapter 53 Bloodgate. All the way to the Bloody Gate, some people in the team were reluctant at first and insisted on turning back to the west. As the bandits' attacks increased and the battle became more brutal, no one doubted the correctness of Six's command. Joffrey stood on Six's side. He didn't care about Lady Stark's hatred. To be honest, he didn't care about the life and death of the little devil. If it weren't for the life-and-death battle with the bandits, he would have liked this journey. Sig asked him to be in a supporting position as much as possible. At first, he was very dissatisfied and thought he was underestimated. As the number of life-and-death battles increased and bloody corpses piled up in front of him, he began to appreciate Sig's kindness. Sometimes the battle happened once a day, or even twice. As the valley gradually narrowed and the cliffs on both sides became steep, head-on confrontations were inevitable. The scale of the battle gradually decreased, and the blood dance gradually increased. In the constant battles and witnessing the deaths of many people, Joffrey inadvertently recalled the scene at the beginning of the year when he used the lion's tooth to force the butcher's apprentice, and recalled how immature and stupid he was at that time. In the past few months, he would dream about the lion's tooth. It was such a beautiful and exquisite longsword. As he gained more combat experience, he realized that the lion's tooth's carved blade was too gorgeous and impractical, and the reduced size was too ideal for his body. The lion's tooth was really not a practical value. On the contrary, the broken sword in his hand, although the hilt was just a lead ball wrapped with rags and a counterweight, looked ugly, but it was a real combat weapon. He killed several bandits with this sword, piercing one man's abdomen, the blade swirled, and the bandit's ugly face was tangled together. Another guy's shield was split open, and the sword in the blocking arm slashed straight into his face, leaving a large gap on the toughness. There was another guy riding a skinny horse, and Joffrey was attacked from behind. He thought he was going to die, but he was saved by Sig throwing a huge sword, and he pierced the bandit's chest with the sword, and the tip of the sword came out from the back of his head. The dead man looked at him with disbelief on his face. He no longer missed the exquisite lion's tooth, abandoned the handsome longsword, and became more interested in the warhammer and heavy axe. "I am discarding my honor." After one day's battle, he dragged his tired feet to Sig's side. The great Serd warriors were collecting the food that the bandits had brought with them. To be honest, seeing their equipment and belongings, he had no interest in killing them. There was no honor in defeating these ragged and skinny guys, but a sense of guilt. Why? If you don't kill them, you'll be killed. There is no honor for the dead. Sig's thinking was still so direct, and it often hit people's hearts. But this time he guessed wrong. "I don't want to use the sword anymore." He watched the little devil stagger past him, holding a battle axe from the bandits in his hand, with a spike on the top of the axe. "It's more efficient to use the thing, but shouldn't real knights use swords?" "Ha ha ha ha." Sigurd laughed, and the Hound laughed too. Lady Stark cast a puzzled look at him, and Joffrey blushed. "That's so interesting, my prince. A real knight? What kind of title is that?" or those noble warriors who were smeared with holy oil or canonized not knights. You must have read too many knight novels. The longsword is just a weapon, suitable for slashing and stabbing, and it is easy to carry, so it is used by most people. What's wrong with a battle axe or a warhammer? Just like it and it's fine as long as it's handy. Your father also killed Rower with a warhammer, so why doesn't anyone say that he abandoned his honor? Sigurd found him a two-handed heavy axe with blades on both sides. The spike on the top of the axe made the weapon reach the standard of a longsword in length. Joffrey swung the axe and felt the surge of strength. Sure enough, he was more suitable for heavy weapons. Was it because of his father? The subsequent journey was still difficult. The daily battle became a routine, but Joffrey no longer had the previous troubles. Every time the axe chopped into the human body, or smashed the shield and armor, there was a sense of fulfillment. He was no longer the golden-haired rookie who paid attention to his appearance. His heart had hardened, and his immaturity was fading. He was happy to feel the progress and growth he could feel. He looked forward to the daily battles, looking forward to the excitement of his body and the splashing of the enemy's blood. Just when he thought that such days would continue forever, that day, the bandits' attacks stopped. The surroundings were shrouded in a strange silence. It's definitely not because they gave up. Sigurd asserted so, and Joffrey agreed with his point of view. In the cliffs and dense forests on both sides, they always felt that there were eyes watching them. The bloody gate is just ahead, they dare not come. Lady Stark pointed between the mountains as if announcing that she had arrived home. A series of battlements on the cliffs formed a defensive fortification. Two watchtowers cling to the rock face, connected by a grey stone arch bridge. This is the Bloody Gate. Joffrey's ears were calloused by the legend of the Bloody Gate. It was said that in the Age of Heroes, this place resisted thousands of troops, and countless blood died that valley red. The bandits in the Moon Mountains today are the descendants of the defeated army that lingered back then. Sig led the team forward. A team of fully armed knights came up to meet them. Sky blue cloaks, a white crescent moon and a falcon emblem fluttered in the wind. These people were knights of the valley. Sig met with the knights as if they were old friends, without any scruples. Joffrey tried to follow them, but was stopped by the hound. We'd better hide our identities. He turned to the others and said, I hope you don't reveal our identities. Lady Lisa is a notorious lunatic in King's Landing. I don't want His Royal Highness to make any mistakes. Watch your words. Lisa is my sister. She is a gentle and noble. She may not be good at speaking, but she certainly knows etiquette. Lady Stark said coldly. How long have you not seen her? The hound made a sarcastic expression with half of his normal face, and the other half of the burnt part showed a sinister look. Take my advice, she is no longer a normal person. No matter what she was like before, she is no longer now. I promise to keep the prince's identity secret, but facts will prove you wrong. Lady Stark said so after exchanging glances with the people around her. Joffrey didn't care whether to hide his identity. Sig turned back with the Knights of House Elrond. He seemed to have a tacit understanding with the hound, and when he passed by Joffrey, he treated him as an ordinary squire. The leading Vale Knight saluted Lady Stark and asked to escort them to the Bloody Gate. Being treated as a servant, he thought he would be unhappy, but surprisingly he did not feel anything special. The closer he got to the Bloody Gate, the narrower the cliffs on both sides were, and the more he felt the incredible defense of the city. He tried to imagine himself as a member of the siege force, but he could not imagine how to break through here. Who wants to pass through the Bloody Gate? Someone on the top of the city asked in a hoarse voice. I am Catelyn Stark of Winterfell, and I need to go to the area to meet Lady Lisa Elrond. Lady Stark responded loudly. Oh, it turns out to be little Catelyn, you have grown so big. The tone of the person asking became friendly. It's nice to see you, uncle, you are still in good health, which is more exciting than anything else. The city defense was withdrawn, and a knight wearing heavy armor, with a weather face, gray hair, thick eyebrows and blue eyes came out to greet him. His emblem was not a falcon and a crescent moon, but a black fish leaping out of the water. Joffrey seemed to have heard of this person, but he couldn't remember it for a moment. Let me see little Kate, she's already a noble and elegant lady. The visitor seemed to be familiar with Lady Stark. The two of them hugged each other warmly and addressed each other intimately. Sir Brandon, it's nice to meet you. Sir Rodriguez's greeting reminded Joffrey that this person was Brandon Tully, the younger brother of Lord Hoster Tully of Riverrun. He and his brother Bum left the river and even abandoned the family emblem. It turned out that he was in the gully. I came here and encountered attacks from bandits. Many loyal knights died, and several people in the team were injured and in need of treatment. Lady Stark did not forget to greet others. But please pay attention to this person. She pointed at the little devil, he is my prisoner. As long as he is alive, he doesn't need too much thoughtful treatment. Tyrion Lannister of Casterly Rock, son of Tywin Lannister. Lady Stark seems to have some misunderstandings about me. The dwarf saluted shamelessly. No problem, I will definitely send the best monks to treat the knights. Joffrey remembered that this man's nickname was Blackfish. But little Kate, are you going to leave now? It's still 2 days' journey from here to the Eyrie, and the mountain road is dangerous. I suggest you take a rest for a night. Blackfish said politely while motioning his men to take the little devil away. Judging from the soldiers' rude actions, the dwarfs must be treated no better than ordinary prisoners. Because of their hidden identities, the team was naturally led by Lady Stark. She nodded in agreement and they could rest in the Bloody Gate tonight. Accustomed to the days of fighting, I heard that I could sleep in bed and not worry about attacks. First, there was desire, and then there was fatigue. He wanted to fall asleep. Wait. A knight walked down from the tower quickly. Lady Lacy sent a message by bird. She hopes Lady Stark will go with the mountain first. Chapter 54. Flying from the Moongate. Look at what you did, bringing Lannister to the area and putting my son in danger. The fat woman screamed on the high seat, foaming at the mouth and looking gloomy, and she didn't look like Lady Stark's sister at all. Lisa, it was you who wrote to tell me that Arryn was murdered, and it was you who warned me that Lannister was behind it. Now I captured the little devil just to have a fair trial. Lady Stark was capable and sharp, and she quickly fought back. When the two women were arguing, Joffrey, as a guest, was watching from the side. He wanted to step forward and interrupt several times, but was pulled by Sig. What are you doing? Why are you stopping me? That woman is abnormal. I want him to understand that the accusation against the important ministers of the kingdom needs to go to my father, not talk nonsense here. He shouted. Why are you lowering your voice? Sig's question stunned him, because you know that speaking loudly here is useless and will mess things up, so your highness, the best way at this time is silence. This was the 3rd day after they arrived at the Bloody Gate. Mrs. Stark was picked up at the Eyrie that day, and the rest of the group set out the next day. It took them 2 full days to reach the Eyrie. During the journey, the little devil's short legs became lame, so they had to put him in a bamboo basket and carry him to Longsky Castle with bread and fruits, and then directly to the Eyrie. The rest of the group, led by a black-haired girl named Mia, walked to the Eyrie. When Sig told Joffrey privately that Mia was his sister, his father's illegitimate daughter when he was in the Vale of Arryn, he was a little shaken. He originally thought that he would look down on Mia, or have a bad impression of her. But when he first saw this sister with black hair, tall and strong, and wearing leather armor, he didn't feel anything else. The 2 days of contact on the road made him like this cheerful and optimistic girl. She is your sister in name, but not in reality, Sig said secretly and meaningfully. Joffrey wanted to ask in detail but was diverted. The area is located at the top of the Mountains of the Moon, straddling the Giant's Lands. The valley is thousands of feet below. It is considered unbreakable. Only after he actually climbed up the small fortress did Joffrey believe this statement. The terrain here is steep, and it is unwise to let all the armed warriors in the server attack by force. The first line of defense, the Bloody Gate, is an insurmountable natural chasm. If someone successfully captures the Bloody Gate after hardships, he will face the Moon Gate, which is as difficult to deal with as the Bloody Gate. Starting from the Moon Gate, each fortress on the Moon Mountains can use boulders and arrows to attack the enemies on the mountain road. On the contrary, if the besiegers want to attack the Eyrie, they must go through a full day and a half of trekking, and this is the time calculated without counting the defenders' obstruction. The 3 fortresses of Dangerous Stone, Snow Mountain, and Long Sky Castle need to absorb countless blood from the attackers. Even if someone really reaches Long Sky Castle regardless of casualties and costs, they will still face the attack of strong crosswinds in the strongest defense system in the kingdom, the defense of the Eyrie itself. Is it feasible to siege without attacking? Joffrey knew a little about military tactics because of Violet. He racked his brains and came up with a strategy of siege without attacking. As long as we send soldiers to guard the main roads and block the Bloody Gate, the soldiers in the valley cannot leave. We can calmly eliminate the helpers and friendly forces of the Arryn family. When we have cleaned up other places, we can cut off food and water. My prince, your idea is very good, but you may not know that the Moon Mountains are very self-sufficient. Coupled with the large reserves of the Eyrie, siege and blockade for more than 10 years may not be effective. What's more, the Bloody Gate is above, and the path out of the valley is downward. It is difficult to attack it, but it is much easier for them to rush down. Joffrey blushed and lowered his head. Sig patted his shoulder to comfort him, while walking on the narrow road leading to Long Sky Castle, resisting the strong wind, as steady as a walk. As a rookie, you're very good. When you experience more battles in the future and have experience, you will be able to come up with better strategies. Sig walked on the windward side, which reduced the pressure from the side wind a lot. Joffrey walked silently. After spending a few days with Sieg, he found that he was just a frog in the well. Was he really qualified to be a prince? What if his father gave him the throne? Would it really work? He was depressed all the way and even forgot to enjoy the scenery along the way. The council hall of the area was crowded with nobles from the valley. According to Blackfish, most of the nobles had been in the area for some time. They were Lyssa's suitors. According to the tradition of the Valley Kingdom, after Lyssa remarried, her new husband would temporarily take control of the ruling power of the Vale of Arryn until young Duke Robert came of age. As the guardian of the east of the kingdom, Duke Arryn commanded a quarter of the kingdom's heavy troops, and also had the Moon Mountains and the Eyrie Fortress, which were easy to defend and difficult to attack. It was simply a step to heaven. However, in Blackfish's opinion, Lady Lyssa did not seem to have the intention of remarrying in the short term. She was more concerned about the safety of young Duke Robert and her own power. They are all dreaming. Blackfish's conclusion was convincing. The two quarreling women finally realized the core of the problem and turned their attention to the little devil. "You devil, you killed my husband, you should be hanged." Lyssa screamed at the top of her lungs, her face crazy. "Ah. Another air control. I'm so busy. Not only do I have to kill the respected King's Hand and King's Landing, but I also have to go to Winterfell to assassinate the poor and innocent little Bran. Do you really think you can just point your finger at anyone and put the blame on them? The little devil is not a pushover." Joffrey has experienced this many times since he was a child. With Violet's teachings and Sig's guidance, he feels that the little devil is more and more unusual. Most people will be scared to death by the accusations of the Lord, especially in such a scene, even if they are innocent, and they will be unable to refute. Look at the little devil, who was not only eloquent, but also has contempt on his face. Do you know who you are talking to? Dwarf. Lyssa is getting more and more crazy. I can order you to be hanged at any time. I advise you to calm down, madam. It's true that I'm a dwarf, but my last name is Lannister. My father is the Warden of the West, my sister is the Queen, and my brother is a member of the King's Guard. You should consider the consequences of hanging me." The little devil was at ease. Although he was not as tall as an average person and had to look up to face Lady Lyssa, he looked proud as if he was the king of the Eyrie. The nobles of the valley whispered to each other, with anger, curses, and fear. And the respected Lady Stark, "Don't always take out the dagger. That thing can't prove anything. Which idiot would use his own weapon to hire someone to kill someone? Isn't this an obvious strategy to frame someone? Do you think I'm such a fool?" Lady Stark's face was uncertain. The little devil turned around like a playwright, opened his arms. "Lords, nobles, and all the adults of the Valley Kingdom, please see that this is the air control that I, Tyrion Lannister, face. It is a baseless speculation that cannot stand up to scrutiny. Is this what the Valley Kingdom calls justice? You have simply disgraced the former Duke." Curses and arguments buzzed through the hall. The little devil has gone too far. He will be in trouble. Sig whispered in Joffrey's ear. "Aren't you going to save him?" Joffrey asked back. Sig smiled and shook his head. "The little devil is too strong. He can get rid of it by himself. Let's watch the show." "Asshole, you shameless thing, you dare to be so shameless when you're about to die." Lady Lyssa was furious. "Mom, why are you angry? Is he a bad guy?" The little Duke Arryn was a short, pale-skinned boy with brown hair and big eyes. His voice was shrill and his chicken claw-like hands twitched unnaturally. "Yes, my dear, he is the worst man in the world. He wants to do bad things and bully us." Lyssa responded in a trembling, high-pitched voice, different from the one he used in the outside world. Joffrey stared blankly at the thin child sitting on the high platform. "He is Robert. Violet compared me to a child who was spoiled by his mother like him. He couldn't help shaking. Am I really like that?" "Don't worry, my highness, you're better. At least you have been weaned at his age." The one who answered him was the Hound. His burnt face had no expression, and it seemed that he was being sarcastic. "No. Why is he still alive?" The boy screamed hysterically, even more shrill and morbid than his mother. "I want him to fly. Mom, let him fly." If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelas. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 55. The Dungeon of the Eagle's Nest. The sky blue cloud fluttered as the moon door opened. Two of the four guards cautiously opened the door. It was like opening the door to another world. In addition to the rumbling sound of the wind, the sunlight shining through the door was dazzling. Sig was calm on the surface, as quiet as an ordinary servant, but his heart was not calm. Just now, the grey mist on the little demon turned black. The future of the dwarf is uncertain. This is not a good sign. The moon door opened, revealing the valley 600 feet below. Through the moon door, the distant fortresses of the Vale of Arryn, surrounded by thick clouds and mist, seemed to be a reflection of the fairy tale world. Of course, he knew that this was not a fairy tale, but a scene of a terrible abyss. With his body structure comparable to the divine apostle, he might not be able to escape unscathed from such a high fall, let alone a fragile dwarf. Now is not a good time. His identity is still too weak to affect Lady Lysa. If he used force, it would inevitably lead to a massacre. Imagine that a servant relied on the power of one person to blood the entire area. It would be strange if this behavior did not attract the attention of the root of disaster. He was in a dilemma. Either face the death of the little devil. What will happen next and whether the world will enter a cycle of collapse is unknown. Or save the little devil and be discovered by the root of disaster, and he and Violet will be excluded. Either result is not what he wants. Is this the justice of the Valley Kingdom? You executioners, my father, sister, and brother will not forgive you. It is simply a false accusation. I am innocent. The little devil shouted at the top of his voice. The soldiers carried him and approached the moon gate step by step. The wind became more violent, the wind direction changed, and the soldier's cloak was set towards the doorway. The little devil stopped screaming, stared with terrified eyes, and kicked his limbs randomly. Wait. Lady Stark interrupted the execution with an unexpected look on her face. Lysa, I want to remind you that the little devil is my prisoner and he will be tried in Winterfell. No longer, my son, Lord Arryn has ordered him to fly. Lysa said firmly without giving our sister any mercy. The Duke did not specify a specific time for the little devil to fly. Sigurd used a little trick to make his voice echo throughout the hall. Little Robert seemed very interested and waved him over. Under the puzzled gaze of the bigwigs, Sigurd strode up the steps and came to Lady Lysa and Little Robert. Your Excellency the Duke, Lady Lysa, I am Sigurd Baratheon, Squire of the Sword Dancer at Winterfell. Little Robert looked at him curiously, while others were full of surprise and confusion. Sigurd played a trick. Although Little Robert was the real Duke in name and Lady Lysa was just acting on his behalf, due to his age, no one would really respect him, and Lady Lysa would usually be placed in front during the ceremony. As time goes by, Little Robert will inevitably become dissatisfied. His strategy is to use Little Robert as a breakthrough point. He is probably the only one who pays serious respect to Little Robert. Sigurd bowed deeply. He stole a glance and saw that the thing Little Robert looked uncertain. He looked back at his mother. Lady Lysa had not yet reacted and naturally did not give him any hints. So the little guy was satisfied and accepted what might be the first formal greeting in his life. You said I didn't set a time for the dwarf to fly. That's not right. I want him to fly out of the moon door immediately. Sigurd paid attention to Little Robert's expression and confirmed that he was not angry. He realized that the plan was successful. He bowed his head again. Your Excellency the Duke, it is of course your order to let the dwarf fly, but there are some necessary rituals before he flies, just like washing hands before eating and putting down the saddle before riding. You can ask Lady Lysa, she will tell you what the ritual is before letting someone fly. As the Guardian of the East, it is your duty to ensure the integrity of the ritual. He said this while sweating for the little devil. The premise for the success of a strategy is that Robert understands what he is talking about and agrees with the Duke's obligations. He doesn't know how the Arryns have spoiled Robert. If he really doesn't understand and doesn't care about obligations and traditions, it's useless to say anything. Really. Before letting someone fly, there needs to be a ritual. Lysa glared at Sig. Of course, my child, even the Duke can't let someone fly casually. There needs to be a reason, and the prisoner must plead guilty. Okay, let the dwarf plead guilty, and then let him fly. Robert gave an order, and the soldiers dragged the little devil back. The heavy wooden door was locked, the whistling sound disappeared, and Sig breathed a sigh of relief. Lady Stark was also sighing. Did she suspect that the little devil was not the murderer? Dwarf, do you plead guilty? Lady Lysa said sharply, her watery eyes flashing with persistence and madness. I plead guilty. Not at all. The little devil's attitude made the whole hall noisy. I, Tyrion Lannister, demand a fair trial, not a trial by a mad woman in a child-playing house. Lady Lysa stood up angrily, looking like she wanted to curse, then she sat down again and restored the grace of a noble lady. No one can withstand the punishment of the dungeon. Sir Egan. Yes, ma'am. The man with a broad face, silver hair and a sturdy figure bowed. Find a suitable dungeon for the dwarf, let him think carefully and repent of his sins. Lady Lysa said with a smile on her lips. The black mist on the little devil disappeared, leaving only a wisp of grey mist. Sir Egan came to the little devil, grabbed the collar like a chicken, and remained unmoved no matter how the little devil kicked and hit him. His heavy and resolute figure disappeared into the depths of the castle. When Lady Lace's stern eyes swept across the hall, Sigurd had already retreated into the crowd and turned into an ordinary existence. He saw to Lady Lace. She would not care about a squire who was not even a knight. As long as he left her sight in time, she would not remember who ruined her good deeds. In the next few days, Sigurd became busy. With the influence of Lady Stark, he moved around and inquired about the situation in the dungeon. The dungeons of the area were not built underground. The traditional dark, damp and smelly underground cells were not suitable for the area. Half a man can't hold out for a few days. Maud, the plain-looking prison guard who was almost as tall as the devil, lost his due vigilance after being forced to drink. It's a place with bright light and fresh air. If you lived there in winter, half a man would have been frozen into a stick. But it's more interesting in summer. Sig filled Maud's glass with wine. Haha, you don't know, that's half a room built on a cliff, and the floor has been polished and is smooth. There is nothing in the cell except the walls and the door. You can't sleep while there. You must always be careful not to fall down. Most prisoners dare not look at the edge during the first 2 days after entering. What if you look down? Sig found something to talk about for Maud. Of course it's red filth. I tell you, those who jump from the cell won't have complete corpses. They will only leave a large pool of blood on the rock. Maud gestured with his short and strong arms. The hardship in the cell is unimaginable to those who have not seen it with their own eyes. Half a man can't stand it for a few days. He will fly and become a pool of blood. Maud's brain is not good. Compared with the little devil, this guy is more pitiful. At least the little devil has a good brain. Sig took advantage of Maud's drunkenness and left quietly. He judged that the little devil could escape through wisdom. Aren't you going to save my uncle? Sig, Joffrey and the Hound lived in the same room. Due to Lady Lace's hostility, the Hound followed his advice and did not reveal his identity, and Joffrey did not either. Although their treatment was very low, they also gained precious freedom. What? Are you going to take action? This is the area. Even if you save him, you can't escape. He guessed the prince's plan. No matter what, he is my uncle. Although I don't like him, such a crime is unconvincing. I think my uncle is innocent. The young prince was very serious. He kept playing with a battle axe in his hand. The axe was very different from when he first got it. The gap on the blade was repaired, the axe handle was replaced with fine hardwood, and the thorn on the tip of the axe was replaced with a real spear tip. Let's do it now and reveal our identities. Unless they want to raise the flag of rebellion, they will never dare to attack us. Your method is feasible against normal people. Unfortunately, your opponents are madmen and children. Will it really work? The Hound put cold water on the side. Joffrey opened his mouth, speechless. No need, you all underestimate the dwarf. Sig said seriously. Madmen and children can't beat him. Chapter 56 Confession. Lesha summoned all the vassals to the square, including Sig and other guests of low status. This was a feast. The adults gathered on the viewing platform with flowers and clusters. They sat or stood, and took raspberry jam from the long table at will. Servants were on the side, delivering fruit wine. The low-ranking attendants, warriors, and monks crowded on both sides of the square. Of course, they had no raspberries to eat, and they could not enjoy the wine, but everyone was excited, as if a grand ceremony was about to take place. She doesn't look well. Beside the gloomy-faced Hound, Joffrey pointed his chin in the direction of Mrs. Stark on the stage. The Prime Minister's wife is not stupid. She knows that it is inappropriate to treat the little devil like this. Joffrey habitually looked around, but unfortunately there was no servant holding a wine glass. The lost look was fleeting. You're really not worried about my uncle? Isn't he very important? The reason why the little devil is important is closely related to his wisdom. The fact that he was able to escape from the deadly dungeon successfully has already said a lot. We just need to watch quietly. Sig handed over the valley raspberry wine and brewed. Try it, it's definitely better than what the adults drink. A big hand reached out, grabbed the wineskin across Joffrey and snatched it away. Joffrey was slow to react. Hound, you're going too far, I'm a prince. He lowered his voice and scolded. The Hound first took a sip, then took 2 big gulps. It tastes good. The prince stared at his guard with empty eyes. The Hound burped and blew a mouthful of alcohol at him. Sigurd watched the interaction between the monarch and his subject with interest. The changes were not only in big aspects, but also in the smallest details. I heard that you are good at brewing wine. Bronn, a mercenary with a ferocious face, squeezed over. He took the wineskin from the Hound with familiarity, and took a big sip under Joffrey's resentful gaze. Good wine. It's a pity to let you be a squire. You're flattered. Sigurd took the wineskin from Bronn's hand modestly. Poor Joffrey almost got it. It's surprising that you're still here. Can't you ask Lady Stark for your reward and leave? He wiped his mouth with his sleeve, attracting the attention of people around him. Bronn stared at the stage nonchalantly. I'm waiting for an opportunity. Maybe I can earn more. Joffrey finally grabbed the wineskin and drank it hard but didn't drink a drop. Bronn drank all the wine in one gulp. Joffrey threw the wineskin to the ground viciously, but Sigurd caught it with an artistic technique. He looked at Bronn. Not only did he look ferocious, but he was also cruel and ruthless. In the fight with the bandits, he showed strength that was not inferior to the Kingslayer. No matter what weapon it was, it became a real weapon in his hands, and taking people's lives was like cutting grass. His personality was also very sinister and vicious. Another mercenary companion who joined the team with him was pierced through the chest by an arrow, but did not die immediately. He did not hesitate to kill the poor mercenary and took the horse and weapon. His attitude was as if the one who was injured was not his own people, but a bandit. Under Joffrey's dumbfounded gaze, Sigurd turned the bottle-mouth mechanism of the wineskin, opened the lid, and could drink the wine again. The MC called out the names loudly, and Lady Lysa came on stage with little Robert. "Mom, can we see the dwarf fly today?" asked little Robert in a shrill voice, his body trembling constantly. Sig narrowed his eyes and judged that the little guy had congenital epilepsy. "My dear baby, don't worry, Mom will let him fly right away," Lysa said to little Robert laughingly, and then her expression was solemn and dignified. "Bring the man up." The guards brought the haggard and staggering little devil to the square. "Dwarf, you said you want to plead guilty." Lysa's expression was as solemn as a judge. Maud was also at the scene, and it was obvious that the message was delivered through him. "Yes, my good lady, after a few days of thinking on the edge of the cliff, I repent and plead guilty." The little devil's voice was sincere, no longer eloquent, like a cat with its teeth pulled out. There was a sneer from the crowd, and Lysa glanced at the whole audience. "Then tell me, what crime you have committed, Targaryen may give you a quick death. Hurry up. Otherwise, I will let you fly immediately." Little Robert said hysterically. "Yes, I plead guilty." The little devil lowered his head, and the grey mist wrapped around him swam rapidly. "I am guilty, a complete evil man." His tone was sincere, just like those sinners who were truly remorseful. "I learned to peep at maids bathing when I was 5 years old, and I liked pranks more when I was 6. Once I stole the clothes of a knight who was having fun with one of his father's maids." There was constant laughter in the crowd. Lady Lysa on the stage looked around in panic, and Lady Stark turned her head away, not wanting to look her sister in the eye. "When I was 8 years old, I secretly took away the jeweled scepter of the Archbishop of Casterly Rock and replaced it with a broken mop head. At this solemn moment, under the gaze of my father and many nobles and vassals, the Archbishop solemnly picked up the mop head. The mop was still wet. Before changing it, I soaked it with sewage from the toilet." The crowd could no longer bear it. There were many people laughing wildly and laughing out loud. The noble ladies and young ladies who were listening could not help but bend over with laughter. "This is not all the bad things I have done. I have been a seed of sin since I was a child, so I was named the Little Devil." Enough. With Lysa's stern shout, the little devil's confession came to an abrupt end. Many people at the scene sighed, and some even disliked Lady Lysa for interrupting him when he was doing something wonderful. Little Duke Robert was one of them. Lady Lysa had to spend time to make little Robert happy before she could continue. "Tyrion, today we have gathered everyone to ask you to confess other crimes." "Other crimes?" The little devil looked innocent and confused. "You must confess how you killed my husband and how you attempted to murder Brandon Stark of Winterfell." Lady Lysa looked at Lady Stark. Her expression was beyond words, as if to say, "Look, I'm helping you solve the problem, accept my favor." Lady Stark frowned and turned away. "But ma'am, I didn't do it." There was another uproar of the scene. "I admit that I am a demon, stealing chickens and ducks, watching people take a bath. These kinds of things are commonplace for me. But," his eyes were bright, "how can I admit that I haven't done something?" Lady Lysa's chest rose and fell with anger. She stood up suddenly. "You cunning thing, I don't let you see the means of the Valley Kingdom. Do you think we orphans and widows are easy to bully? Come on, throw him into the Moongate for me." Lysa shouted hysterically. "This is the so-called justice of the Eagle's Nest." The little devil's shrill voice echoed in the square. "Please tell me that this is not the bandit nest of the Moon Mountains. Where is your trial? How do you show your justice? As long as you don't repent, you have to die. Do you take the laws of the kingdom seriously? This is treason, an act of treason." Few of the audience, even the bigwigs on the stage, could remain calm. Most of them were timid and panic-stricken. Madam Lesha, I remind you that without the proper trial procedures, I will naturally die based on your one-sided statement, but I am afraid that everyone here will follow me soon. As traitors to the kingdom, as shameful traitors, your heads will be stuck on the spears of the outer city of the Red Castle and pecked by crows. The huge square fell silent, except for the whistling of the wind. You, Lesha was so angry that she couldn't speak. Nonsense. We can't be, the eagle's nest is impregnable, no one can capture it. Little Robert screamed. Yes, it is indeed a bit stronger here, but it is far from being impossible to fall. Didn't the conqueror defeat you? And the ruler of the Valley Kingdom back then also opened the city and surrendered. No, you will all die, and the eagle's nest will be fine, isn't it right, Mom? We will be fine. Little Robert turned to his mother for help, and eagerly sought comfort in her chest. Humph, relying on such a duke, you gentlemen dare to provoke Armor Rock City. No one refuted the little devil's ridicule. The nobles, vassals, and even ordinary warriors all looked at the supreme ruler of the valley with a grim face and threw himself into his mother's arms. What's even more ridiculous is that you still count on such a little thing to protect your territory and property. There was a commotion in the square, and the bigwigs exchanged opinions uneasily. If you want to judge, I will give you a fair trial. Lesha's eyes seemed to be a sharp knife that cut the little devil into pieces dozens of times. I demand a trial by compact. The little devil said again. Everyone was so surprised that they couldn't close their mouths. 7 gods, I demand a trial by compact under the witness of the gods, and let God decide whether I am innocent. The little devil had a serious expression and a serious tone. Is he mentally broken? Joffrey turned to Sigurd, pointing at his uncle and stammering. The Huns nodded, and Bronn squinted his eyes. Only Sigurd saw through the imp's plan. Chapter 57 Trial by Compact. Laughter resounded throughout the eagle's nest. Even Lesha couldn't keep calm. Sig decided to watch a good show. The square fell silent, and Lesha looked at the little devil meaningfully. As you wish, a trial by combat will be held. Madam, please allow me to fight for you and the Duke. The young knight with a green snake embroidered on his coat knelt on one knee. I am the best candidate. Old Earl Hunter raised his fist and said firmly, for the sake of my respect and love for your husband, let me avenge him. No, I should fight. Sir Albert Royce said, I fight for the little Duke. People with pure positions will surely be favored by the gods. Sir Lancorbray said modestly, such people are the best candidates for swordsmen. Please make the most correct choice, madam. He smiled calmly. More than a dozen noble knights rushed to come forward, and the stage was noisy. Uncle, he's asking for trouble. Joffrey narrowed his eyes, his right hand inadvertently groping on the axe handle. I really don't want to fight for him. He always picked on me and slapped me when I was a kid. I can do it for you. The Hound said expressionlessly, the fools in the valley are nothing to worry about. The tall warrior pressed his hand on the hilt of the sword, and a gloomy and violent awe naturally emanated from him. No, I have to fight. He is my uncle after all. Blood is thicker than water. The prince's eyes were firm. Don't worry about the two of you. There are people who are more suitable than you. Sig patted Bronn's shoulder. The Lannisters will definitely be rewarded handsomely, and I'll give you this. He handed the Sellsword a parchment circle. The Sellsword opened it and quickly browsed through it. He closed the paper circle and walked away silently. What does he mean? Joffrey asked in confusion. You will understand in a moment. Before the prince could refute, Sig pointed to the royal emblem. The exposure of your identity means the end of your journey. Do you want to go back like this? The prince lowered his head. The Hound looked at the two people with a squint and said nothing more. Lady Lacer raised her hand to signal everyone to be quiet. My lords, I sincerely thank you. My son is also grateful for your enthusiasm. Looking at the 7 kingdoms, no one can compare to the loyalty and bravery of our knights of the valley. I also hope that you can all get the honor of fighting, but unfortunately I can only choose one person. She made a gesture. Sir Baratheon, you have always been the right-hand man that the Orings rely on. Why haven't you taken the initiative to ask for a fight? Sir Vardas had been silent before, but now he knelt on one knee. Madam. His tone was solemn. Please give the important task to others. I really don't want to fight this man. He is only half my height and is lame. Killing him is really not an honor. Great, sir, you are right. The little devil echoed on the side. The square was very quiet, and his words caused a burst of laughter. Lacer glared. You are the one who asked for a trial by compact. The little devil imitated the knight's bow, and his appearance made this action neither elegant nor calm, just like a clown's drama. Everyone in the valley laughed again. I also ask for a proxy. Find my brother, Jaime, to fight for me. Humph. The king's lair is 100 miles away from here. Don't say something impossible. Lacey scolded. You can send a bird to find him. The little devil looked like he was sure of victory. I can wait. You must duel with Sir Vardis tomorrow, without delay. Lacey said viciously. Singer. The little devil shouted at Marillion, a famous bard in the kingdom, who happened to be there. Please write a song about what happened here, and make sure to describe in detail how Lady Oberyn forbade the dwarf to find a substitute knight, and made him limp against her best knight. How could I? Lacey said sharply, and her anger burst out, causing a table of raspberry juice to suffer. Little devil, if you have the ability, pick a substitute knight, if you think someone will die for you. The little devil tried his best to hold his chest high and walked in the square with an uplifted attitude. He looked very funny, and the people around him couldn't help laughing. Who was willing to stand up for the poor dwarf and cripple here? The Lannister family guarantees a rich reward. Gods, I am innocent, and the gods will stand on your side. For a long time, no one responded. The little devil's expression was awkward, and there was constant laughter around him. The commotion came from the outer periphery. I will go to fight, and remember to ask your father to pay more money. Bronn responded to him loudly. And the duel began the next day, and the location was chosen to be next to the terrace of Alessa. The pure white sculpture, the beautiful Alessa's eyes constantly gushed out clear springs pouring down 600 feet, straight to the bottom of the valley. The nobles of the valley crowded the nearby high platform. The roofs of the buildings near the duel field were crowded with people. Gentlemen, you are on the wrong side. Lady Stark said coldly. Sig, the Hound and Joffrey were helping Bronn prepare his armor and weapons, and no one paid attention to her. Sig lent Bronn a good sword, which was actually Joffrey's sword. Since he now uses the battle axe, the long sword has become his spare. Joffrey and the Hound prepared armor for Bronn, and Bronn refused heavy armor and even refused to use a shield. I want to remind you that Vardis is not comparable to a bandit. He has superb sword skills and pure skills. What's more valuable is that he has a tough heart. The Hound reminded with a serious face. Why don't you just say you don't think highly of me? Bronn threw the breastplate aside carelessly. He only asked for the gauntlets, iron gloves, and neck guard, and even the skirt armor on his thighs. I'm a very ruthless person. I'll be careful to make more money. I've seen Vardis duel. He has no problem with skills and strength, but his only shortcoming is speed. It's definitely right to adopt a tactic that pursues speed, but be careful in close combat. He has a dagger for self-defense. His dagger is not slow. Joffrey made earnest instructions, as if he was more concerned about participating in the duel than he was himself. Sig was very surprised. Joffrey should be mean and ungrateful. When did he become valuing family affection? He was not wrong. The prince used to be a mean, ungrateful, timid and cowardly person. Now it seems that the prince has become more concerned about feelings and honor. He began to wonder if he had trained Joffrey too much. It would be troublesome to really train a perfect knight. The bell rang, and 2 substitute knights came on stage. Bronn was lightly dressed, carrying a long sword and no shield. His appearance caused a burst of laughter. Someone shouted, "Are you here to make fun of me?" This warrior, as ruthless as a dagger, raised his long sword and saluted everyone. His thick skin was unmatched. Sir Vardis appeared. He was wearing heavy armor, with a shield tied to his left arm, and a warhammer in his right hand. Respected Knight Vardis, this is my husband's sword. I hope you can use his sword to avenge him. Lady Lacey had someone hand the knight a beautifully decorated long sword. The knight frowned and hesitated for a while, and only knelt down to receive the weapon at Lady Lacey's urging. Sir Vardis's equipment was very heavy, and kneeling on one knee made him panting. Women don't know how to fight. If it were me, I would never let Vardis use that sword. It's okay for decoration, but in actual combat, his warhammer is better. The Hound commented. Joffrey had not interrupted since just now, and his whole body was focused on the 2 people fighting. The 2 warriors first tested each other with their weapons, and then launched 2 short quick attacks back and forth in a straight line. Their movements were skillful and their blocking was standard. Judging from their techniques alone, they were evenly matched. Then Vardis launched a fierce attack, and Bronn only blocked or dodged, occasionally leaving scratches on his opponent's heavy armor with light techniques. Asshole. You coward, fight quickly. Coward, why are you retreating? Did your mother have legs the wrong way when she gave birth to you? The people in the valley began to curse and ridicule. Bronn calmly responded to Vardis's attack, and seemed to be completely immune to the insults around him. Joffrey squinted his eyes to watch the duel, and the little devil clenched his fists. His nervousness was self-evident. Except for Lady Stark, the other bigwigs on the high platform were chatting and laughing, as if they knew the result of the duel. Sir Vardis stumbled. When the audience shouted, Bronn rushed forward and attacked. Trap. The Hound said solemnly. The moment Bronn swung his sword, Vardis blocked his sword with his shoulder guard. A cold light flashed in the knight's hand, and Bronn leaned back like lightning. He lost his balance and fell down, continuing to roll backwards. The knight Vardis' sword followed, leaving a wide mark on Bronn's gauntlet. The two warriors got into position again, and Bronn's face, forehead and neck were covered with sweat. Sir Vardis was panting. If it was a waterhammer, Bronn's hand would be useless. Sigurd agreed with the Hound's opinion and was very glad for his intervention. Just now, the black mist was entangled around Bronn, and he thought something would happen. Fortunately, the Hound was brought here, otherwise it would be hard to say whether Vardis' dagger trick would succeed. Chapter 50. The Long Road Home. After the dagger's attack, Bronn became more cautious. Knight Vardis showed his weakness several times but failed to fool Bronn. Enough, Vardis, end this farce. Lady Lace's patience was exhausted first. She shouted at the duel field with disgust and sharpness. Her behavior made many nobles on the high platform look at her sideways. However, her order was obviously effective for the knight, who was moving slower and gradually on the defensive. The knight roared furiously and charged forward. He rushed forward regardless of Bronn's longsword blocking him. Bronn was unstable and rolled to the side. There was a sound of metal breaking, and Bronn's sword broke into two pieces. Sir Vardis hit the statue of Khalasar. The pure white marble sculpture was knocked aside and shook in place. Bronn showed a ferocious look on his face. He roared and hit the corner of the statue with all his strength. The heavy statue fell down with a bang. The knight used his shield to gain momentum and used a rolling posture to avoid for the first time since the duel began. Vardis managed to avoid the statue's crushing body, but he paid a price. His elbow was red and bleeding. One of his legs was lame, making it more difficult to move and dodge. Sir Vardis, what are you doing? Kill him. Lace's voice was almost screaming. Many nobles and vassals on the platform gathered around her, pointing fingers at her. I don't want to listen. I don't want to listen. Vardis should be able to win easily. I don't want to listen to your excuses. Let the dwarf fly. I want him to fly. Little Robert was making trouble on the side. Sir Vardis' physical strength was obviously declining. He was panting and stumbling, trying to shrink his defense with a shield and heavy armor. The offensive and defensive situation had reversed. Lace is really damned. She should have stopped the duel. The winner has been determined. Joffrey said angrily. Women don't know how to fight with swords. They are sometimes more cruel than men. The Hound said sadly. Sig thought carefully and decided not to interfere with what was about to happen. Although Vardis was a brave knight, he was useless to him. Such a man had obvious weaknesses, and was not qualified to be a commander, let alone a hero who could influence the historical situation. Lace's order worked on Vardis again. He let out a roar that was almost a wail, and staggered towards Bronn. This time it was not an acting. Bronn's movements were light and agile, and the broken sword in his hand was like a venomous snake. Suddenly, his figure overlapped with Vardis's, and the two were no longer staggered. Bronn pressed heavily on Vardis, and his broken sword penetrated the gap in the neck guard and deeply penetrated the knight's neck. The knight's left hand, the shield fell to the ground, and his dagger was stuck on Bronn's shoulder guard. Bronn avoided the fatal stab towards his neck with a strange posture. In the stands and around the duel, there was a lot of noise, and the unexpected result was Mrs. Lace's hysterical screams and the laughter of the young Duke Robert. All of this combined, Sig named this phenomenon the prelude to destruction. This was not the first time he had experienced such a scene. The rulers who were high above did not care about the lives of loyal warriors and acted on their own. The latter often faced cunning enemies who did not pay attention to routines. The ending was predictable. Bronn seemed to wait for a while. Why not pause? Doesn't that stupid woman know that his knight has lost? Joffrey said in astonishment. She doesn't know. She can't even see the blood flowing out of Vardis' armor. Poor guy. The Hound's comment was like the judgment of the god of death. Bronn, who was no longer patient, slowly handed over the broken sword. Vardis' mouth, nose, ears, and even eyes were bleeding. The corpse twitched a few times under Bronn's body and stopped moving. Bronn turned on his back and gasped heavily. This is the will of the seven gods, a fair judgment, and the gods know that I am innocent. The little devil rushed forward and kissed Bronn, who was exhausted. The latter turned his head hard with a look of disgust. You don't fight for honor. Lesha screamed sharply. She bared her teeth at Bronn, like a mad bitch. Bronn stood up with difficulty, pushed the little devil away, and wiped his cheek vigorously. Yes, I don't fight for honor. He came to the poor Vardis and kicked him twice. The metal and dead meat shook. He fights for honor. Bronn spat by the way, attracting the attention of the nobles in the valley. I hate that woman, insidious, cunning, and unruly. The little devil cursed on the horse. Save your energy, you will attract bandits. Bronn walked cautiously in front of the little devil. We are here because of you. Joffrey was on his side, swinging his battle axe to chop off the bushes that blocked our way. Is this really okay? If I reveal my identity, the people in the valley will not embarrass us. Joffrey was still unwilling to give up, and turned his head back to the direction of the Eyrie. It was the second day of the trial by compact. Lady Lesha gave the 5 men enough food and horses, and sent someone to escort them out of the Bloody Gate. She did not send out knights. This led to the fact that the 5 men were surrounded by mountain bandits. Sig adopted the advice of the little devil, abandoning the main road and taking the mountain road instead. This way, at least we can avoid being assassinated by the people sent by the valley. He believed in the command and judgment of the little devil, and was unwilling to further reduce the power of the valley. According to his experience, these forces are likely to be used by him in the future, and he does not want to lose too many well-trained knights for nothing. They must be watching us. The Hound said, holding a long sword. Your nickname is Hound, very appropriate. The prince went forward like chopping wood, looking back. Did you determine it by smell? The Hound ignored him and went forward on his own. Don't be optimistic. She won't believe you and will only treat you as an ordinary servant. If you die in the mountains of the moon, she can say she didn't know. If you escape, it won't be the fault of the Valley Kingdom, because you were out in plain clothes. Joffrey spat and didn't look back. Let's go find some prey and make a bonfire. The little devil suggested. If you dare to make a fire, I will roast you first. The mercenary said viciously. Bronn must have regretted it. Sigurd stopped. I agree with him. Let's get some prey, roast them, and make a bonfire to eat for our guests. Except for the little devil, everyone else looked confused. Haha, you are indeed a smart man. I am optimistic about you. The little devil laughed. You guys are all idiots, can't you see my strategy? Instead of hiding here, it is better to lead the bandits here openly. Facing an opponent that cannot be defeated, what is needed is not caution, but strategy, rhetoric and price. The little devil nodded confidently, as if he was fully prepared. The Mingu Mountains at night did not match the name, and it was spooky, and from time to time there were strange cries of wild beasts. The bonfire was blazing, and a wild boar was roasted on the fire. The wild boar was sprinkled with 6 spices, and the tempting smell was overflowing. The 5 people could only lean upright against the tree trunk to eat. Are we being too blatant? They will think this is a trap. Dorne said as he picked his teeth. He patted his belly with satisfaction. Sigurd, you damn cook and hunter, gods, it's a crime if you don't work as a hunter or a cook. What do you say? Come to Casterly Rock. I'll recommend you to my father. I believe that as long as they eat the food you cook, my father will fire all the gluttons in the city. What you cook is food. Gods. Please bless me and keep me by your side. I can't stand the days without you. Even though Sigurd was knowledgeable, the little devil's words still gave him goosebumps. Bronn suddenly stood up with his long sword in his hand. The Hound was also not vague, half kneeling and ready for battle. Joffrey was a little slower, with a battle axe in his hand, but his body was crooked and his center of gravity was unstable. Sig shook his head. Violet will be sad to see you like this. He walked forward and held Bronn in the Hound's shoulders. Don't move, look at the little devil, his mouth is better than your arms. Come here, come. We can't finish the delicious roasted boar, so we're waiting for you. Come on, don't be polite, let's eat together. The little devil was like a hospitable dwarf in the legend, with a smile on his face. When, Hound, what are you doing? Don't you see that there are distinguished guests coming? Why don't you bow and greet them? All around, there were heavy shadows, and ragged bandits appeared. Their shadows were long and dragged backwards under the light of the campfire, swaying back and forth in the dark forest. Chapter 59 Promise. It's a cold night tonight, why don't you come and warm yourself by the fire? The little devil shouted to the sneaky shadows, we have the best fruit wine and delicious pork. The surroundings were extremely quiet, as if these people did not exist. Joffrey held the battle axe in his hand. Cold sweat dripped from his neck, soaking his collar, and he felt extremely uncomfortable. Don't move, I will take care of everything. His uncle grabbed his hand and said solemnly. For the first time, Joffrey felt that his dwarf uncle was very reliable. The moon reflected a cold light on the metal. The mountain is ours. A low, firm voice came from the bushes, the pork is ours too. Negotiations failed, strike first. The Hound took a step forward, but was blocked by Sig. Don't be impulsive, the little devil is more powerful than you think. He drew the heavy sword from his back, and the sneaky figures gasped in surprise. The pork is yours, the imp echoed. Who are you? When you ascend to meet your god, another voice responded, telling him that it was Gunther, son of Gunn of the Stone Crows, who sent you back. A thin figure as sharp as a knife stepped through the bushes and walked into the light of the campfire. This person wore a horn helmet and held a hunting knife in his hand. This is Shaga, son of Dov, the previous voice responded. A huge stone moved towards the campfire, then stood up and turned into a man. This was a burly and strong man, wearing animal skins all over his body, holding an axe in his left hand and a stick in his right hand. He walked and clashed the two weapons, and his roars echoed in the dense forest. Then more than a dozen people reported their names one after another. When these people appeared, some of them were holding swords, while others simply wielded pitchforks, sickles and wooden spears. Joffrey was no longer afraid. The real enemy is fear. Violet's teachings were still ringing in his ears, and facts once again proved that she was right. When the enemy appeared, even if he was as tall and strong as Shaga, he was no longer afraid. The axe in his hand reflected the fear light, and the heat in his body surged. He only wanted to make the axe drink blood as soon as possible. I am Tyrion, son of Tywin of the Lannister tribe. The little devil was very patient. He waited until everyone signed up before responding. My father is the Lion Chieftain who lives in Casterly Rock. We are happy to pay compensation for eating pork. Son of Tywin, how do you want to compensate? Gunther seemed to be the leader, and no one interrupted him after he spoke. I have some silver coins in my wallet, and my friends also have a lot of coins, maybe even gold dragons. My armor is too heavy, but it should be suitable for Khan. I also have a battle axe here. The little devil took out the battle axe that was given to him when he fought the bandits before. If this axe is in Shaga's hand, it will be more powerful than his wooden axe. The half-men want to use our things as compensation. Gunther said angrily. Your money is ours, your horses are ours, your armor and weapons are ours, so you can only compensate with your life. Tyrion, son of Tywin, how do you want to die? I want to live to be over 100 years old, drink enough wine, and die in a woman's arms. It seemed that only Shaga understood the joke of the little devil, and the big guy laughed like thunder. Khan, go get the horses. Gunther began to give orders, and the rest, kill the rest, and leave half of them, and let him milk the goats, maybe the children will like it. Bronn and the Hound jumped up. Who wants to die first? Bronn's voice was like the god of death in hell. Joffrey held the battle axe in both hands and carried the shield on his back. This was the fighting posture taught by Violet. It was said that there was once a group called Viking pirates. They galloped across the continents with fast warships and battle axes, making the most powerful kingdoms tremble. He had never heard of such a group, but he believed in the skills taught by Violet, and she had never let him down. Joffrey's target was the huge Shaga. He wanted to create conditions for Sig. As long as Sig's giant sword could exert its power, they still had hope. Sig stood quietly beside the few people, his giant sword casually inserted in the mud, as if he had not yet entered the fighting state. Joffrey had a blind faith in Sig. This man could draw his sword and kill people at any time, and his fighting power was unquestionable. Stop! The little devil shouted angrily. Gunther, son of Gunn, listen to me carefully. My tribe is rich and powerful. As long as the Stone Crows guarantee our safe exit from the mountains, my father the Duke will reward you with countless gold dragons. The gold of the lowland lords is like the words of half-man, which is even less valuable than sheep dung. Gunther said. Although I am a half-man, I have the courage to face the enemy. What about you Stone Crows? When the Knights of the Valley come, you can only hide behind the stones and tremble. Shaga roared and hit the stick and axe again. Yaga poked the little devil's face with his wooden spear. This is all you have. The little devil was not afraid of danger. Joffrey admired his uncle's magnanimity more and more. He was really a giant, as Sig said. These rats are good for killing sheep. Of course, the unfortunate sheep will have to accept its fate and let you kill it. The toothpicks used by my father's blacksmith to pick teeth are more advanced than these. Half-man. Shaga roared continuously, I will twist your head off and feed your life to the goats. It was Gunther who stopped the angry giant. He raised his hand and said, wait a minute, I want to listen to his advice. The children's mother is starving, and a good weapon is more useful than a golden dragon. Son of Tywin, what do you want to exchange for your life? A sword, a gun or armor? Gunther, son of Gunn, I can give you everything you want, and much more than that. The little devil's big and small eyes flashed with wisdom, I will give you the entire Vale. Listen to his nonsense. Shaga's anger was real, I will twist his head off with these hands. Others were not so obedient. The bandits whispered to each other, and the atmosphere became more and more tense. The giant sword was raised, and a whistle was heard in the air, and the bandits retreated one after another. Shaga, stop making such a fuss. You're really that strong. Our little brother Joffrey, who was not even 15 years old, thinks that your huge body is just pup finesse. Shagga turned his eyes to Joffrey angrily. He felt bitter in his mouth. Although he was determined to fight the big guy, he was still scared when he was really pushed into the battle. Sid came to Gunther and said, "Gunther, son of Gun, what the half-man said is true. We can let the young man fight with Shagga. After you have seen his strength, you will understand that a strong warrior does not dare to lie. Why don't you go on the field?" Gunther asked suspiciously. "I'm sorry." Sig's smile looked very ferocious in front of the campfire. "I'm afraid I can't stop and kill you all. Asshole, I want to see how you kill us all." Shagga roared and rushed forward. Joffrey took a deep breath and stood between the two men. "Your opponent is me, big guy. Come on, prove that the flesh on your body is not blown out of thin air." He still didn't understand how to treat Sig, and he couldn't understand what he said. Maybe Sid was really a wizard, but he felt kindness from Sig, so he chose to believe him. Shagga swung his axe and swept across Joffrey's waist. If he hit it, he would be cut in half. He exerted force with both arms, stepped forward half a step sideways, and avoided Shagga's attack point. He used all his strength to block with his battle axe. Sparks flew, and Shagga's axe did not bounce off as expected. The two entered the most unfavorable wrestling state for Joffrey. "Not bad, kid. How long can you hold on?" Shagga seemed to have some strength left, and continued to suppress while smiling. HMPH. Brute force alone is useless. Joffrey put all his strength on the battle axe. He realized that he was at an absolute disadvantage in terms of strength. Fortunately, he was not helpless. He suddenly pulled away the battle axe and leaned his back against Shagga's axe. He turned his two-handed battle axe into a short spear and stabbed forward. Shagga's axe exploded on the shield on his back. Joffrey continued to stab forward regardless of the stars in his eyes. The battle axe stabbed Shagga's wooden stick. Although the big guy was very strong, because of his wrong posture, the wooden stick was simply a perfunctory move. The wooden stick hit his chest under the push of the battle axe. The big guy screamed and fell down, and the axe and the wooden stick rolled to the side. Joffrey's axe landed less than an inch away from Shagga's nose. "You're a dead man." The scene was so quiet that only the crackling of the campfire remained. Gunther believes the words of Tywin's son, young Joffrey, "Your bravery has earned the respect of the Stone Crows." Joffrey gasped, trying to hold back the sweet taste in his throat. Sid gave him a thumbs up. Chapter 60 Violet's Daily Life. King's Landing entered the rainy season. The hot temperature and the steaming heat seemed to melt people. After Joffrey left, Violet's swordsmanship course became less popular. For convenience, she moved the teaching site back to the small parade ground in the Red Castle. Her apprentices were no longer Joffrey and a large number of noble children, but there was a little Prince Tommen. When Queen Tressely brought little Tommen to the parade ground, Violet was really shocked. "As you can see, everyone says that Joffrey is becoming more and more like his father under your teaching. I don't think this is a good thing, but even Lord Tywin wrote to me and asked me to hand him over to you." The Queen's behavior was strange and inexplicably persuasive. She clearly didn't like Violet, but she asked Violet to do things for her in her own unique way. "Your Highness, I accept your request. Myrcella just needs an opponent, and little Tommen is here at the right time." Violet bowed elegantly, seemingly polite and considerate, but without any respect. This was the result of following Sig's instructions. Sid thought that being too submissive would not be respected in the political arena of this kingdom, and being too unruly would make people afraid. Following the rules and showing pride inside became the best choice. Violet didn't care how she should behave. She would do her best to do what Sid wanted her to do. Tressely stared at her seriously. "If I were a man, I would be a perfect knight." She stretched out her slanted fingers and fiddled with her hair in disgust. "A woman's body hinders my performance." The Queen paced back and forth, and Violet stood still, her eyes looking at her nose looking at her mouth, and her mouth caring, unmoved. Tressely stamped her feet unwillingly. "I was just about to order Sir Meryn to beat your little face into a pig's head." Sir Meryn of the King's Guard, wearing the milky white armor inlaid with gold thread and a snow-white cloak, strode forward and stretched out his big hand to Violet's front. The clear sound of a sharp sword being unsheathed echoed in the room. A rapier was against the knight's throat, and the tip of the sword was slightly bent against the throat guard. Sir Meryn opened his hands, his chin dropped to the ground, not even daring to breathe. "If you dare to put your hands here, I'll give you a hole in the back of your head." Violet only revealed a little bit of the murderous aura on the battlefield, and Tressely and her followers couldn't stand it and changed their faces. "What do you want to do?" The Queen's face was pale. "If you hurt me, Robert will never let you go." "Yeah, you can try. No matter how powerful King Robert is, he can't save you and Sir Meryn." "Then I will try my best to escape. At worst, I will die." Anyway, killing the queen and the king's guard is worth it. You're so bold. The queen screamed. The two looked at each other, and the queen's face was uncertain. Stop it now. The scream was urgent and innocent. Dancing flowers flew in. Violet put away her sword, and her slender figure stood between her and Sir Meryn. I don't allow you to hit her. Are you still a knight? Myrcella's intuition broke the deadlock. I'm only here to take your brother to see the female teacher. Tommen is in my care. The queen casually gathered her hair, threw Sir Meryn aside and prepared to leave. Little Tommen appeared behind her. The fat boy's eyes widened in astonishment, his mouth opened wide. Violet cursed herself for being so stupid and forgetting that there was a child present. She jumped lightly and came to the little prince. I'm sorry, I scared you. She did not defend herself. She didn't want to lie to the child. It was her fault. Threatening to kill her mother in front of the child violated her values. She felt guilty. Will you kill your mother? The fat boy looked terrified. Violet shook her head. No, I won't kill the queen. Tommen's gaze made her sad. She lied. She really couldn't be sure. Little Tommen walked forward and patted her arm. Don't be afraid. Myrcella and I will protect you and won't let your mother hurt you, so please don't hurt her. Little Tommen's intuition made the situation complicated. The threatening words could not continue. Violet could only choose to shut up. HNPH, this is the so-called honor education, teaching the prince and princess to be children who disobey their mother's orders. The queen left angrily. Sir Meryn retreated cautiously, leaving Violet for a distance before he dared to turn his back and stride behind Tressailles. Violet sighed softly, as expected of the queen, her aura and pressure are far greater than ordinary people. She smiled apologetically to Myrcella. I have no intention of hurting the queen, but I don't want to be beaten by Sir Meryn. Myrcella shook her head gently, her long sunshine-colored hair swaying in the air. It's not your fault. Sometimes I don't understand why she's so mean to others, but she's so kind to us. Little Tommen joined the sword practice course. After the routine training every morning, the princes and princesses will use the remaining time to study the necessary literature and general knowledge courses. After lunch, Arya came to exchange ideas. Sometimes Sansa came to visit Myrcella. However, this model lady seemed unable to fit into the circle of sword dancing. Every time she came, she would just take a quick look, greet Myrcella and Tommen, and then leave as if escaping. Arya's swordsmanship level improved rapidly. Her sparring with Myrcella was like dancing. Tommen was young and had not received systematic training, so he was in a passive position in the confrontation practice. Violet didn't have a good solution for this, but just reminded him that when he developed and began to grow taller, he would have clear advantage over his two sisters. The days passed quickly, but the Red Castle was not peaceful. At the royal meeting, the king and the prime minister had a conflict. Their shouting could be heard throughout the Red Castle. Violet paid attention to this change and found out that Daenerys Targaryen was pregnant. It was said that a group of witches on the other side of the narrow sea predicted that she was pregnant with a boy. The conflict between the king and the prime minister was here. The prime minister not opposed taking action against women and children. The king and his ministers hoped that both women and children would die. Violet did not comment on the two views. In the Game of Thrones, you either win or die. From this perspective, murdering a pregnant woman is not unacceptable, but she herself rejects this practice. In 6 words, this is not a problem of ability, but a matter of personality. On this day, Tommen made great progress and was able to resist Arya's fierce attack and did not lose in 2 rounds. The little prince screamed excitedly, while the little wolf girl was frowning. Myrcella cheered them up on the side. Violet was absent-minded and she noticed unusual changes. The atmosphere in the Red Castle was not right. Although the parade ground was far away and she could not hear a word from the royal meeting, she realized from the gait and movements of the servants coming in and out that something important was happening. After waiting for the training to end, she ran to the hall where the royal meeting was held, and the adults had already dispersed. The prime minister resigned. He slapped the prime minister's brooch on the king's table. A servant said nervously, "Impossible. Did the king attend the meeting today? He would be absent 9 times out of 10. Another attendant asked doubtfully, "No kidding. Really, His Majesty came at noon and asked me to prepare lunch. He was in a bad mood and even drank less wine." Violet ran away from the Red Keep. Sid had expected this situation when he left, and told her to keep a close eye on Lord Stark if anything happened. Sid suspected that the Duke would be in danger, and his order to her was not to let the Duke die at any cost. Violet was confused. How could the Duke, who had many elite northern troops and was good at using a sword, be in danger? Who else could hurt him except the king? Or was it King Robert who wanted to kill the Duke? She couldn't imagine that two people who were as close as brothers, in fact, closer than real brothers, would hurt each other. The black mist wrapped around the outer city, like a huge monster that could devour the entire city. There was the Street of Love. Violet rode wildly. Chapter 61. Bloody rainy night. The rain was getting heavier. Violet put on a raincoat and used the hood to cover her hair. She galloped on her horse, letting the rain trickle down her cheeks and ears. Fengyu Street was not close, it was at the other end of King's Landing. She had to get there as soon as possible. Fortunately, due to the rain, there were few pedestrians on the street, and the warhorse could run with little hindrance. The rain came across her eyes, like thousands of water arrows piercing straight at her. She lowered her head and lay on the horse's back. The street scenes on both sides flew back. Under the cover of the rain curtain, everything seemed like an unreal illusion. She noticed something unusual and turned her head to see another horse galloping side by side with her. The golden hair was simply tied up, and the cute ponytail floated in the air. Myrcella followed. "What are you doing?" Violet shouted, "Go back." The two horses galloped on the street, and screams came from both sides from time to time. "You fight violence and protect the good, and I want to join you." Myrcella's eyes were determined, and her clear blue eyes reflected Violet's figure in the rain, like a knight entering a charge. "Listen to me, it's not what you think, go back." The rain flowed into her mouth, and she tried to shout to make the other party hear clearly. "No, we're together." Myrcella shouted back. As the Wind and Moon Street approached, the black mist became thicker. There was no time. She made a decision: follow me closely, and do whatever I tell you to do. Okay. Myrcella jumped for joy. The princess was soaked, and the water line flew behind her. Violet felt bitter in her heart, how to explain to the queen. The two stopped at the corner of the street. Lannister warriors wearing red robes and lion helmets blocked the street. More than 30 red-robed warriors, led by the king's lair on horseback, surrounded the prime minister and his 3 guards. Littlefinger, wearing a cloak inlaid with silver edges, was also surrounded. The rain was heavy, and it was hard to hear what they were saying. I only saw the encirclement open a crack, and Littlefinger rode away first. "You are not allowed to pass." The 4 Lannister warriors who were blocking the road stopped them, obviously not recognizing their identities. "Please let us pass, there is something very important." Myrcella's delicate voice could not penetrate the soldier's heavy armor, but only caused ridicule and different laughter. The little girl was soaked by the rain, haggard and heartbreaking, but unfortunately what was needed at this time was majesty rather than pity. Violet reached out to comfort Myrcella. "You are so brave to block us, get out of the way, otherwise Her Majesty will definitely hold you responsible." Violet spoke sternly, and the 4 soldiers looked at each other uncertainly. The rain gradually subsided, and intermittent conversations came from Fengyu Street. "He knows what he is doing." Judging from the tone, it was Duke Stark who was talking. "That's true. I'm looking for my little brother, curly hair, uneven eyes, sharp tongue, short stature." Jaime Lannister said on his horse. It was unclear what Eddard Stark replied, but the two looked calm and peaceful, and didn't seem to be going to fight. In order to hear what they were saying, Violet signaled the people around her to be silent. "He ran into some trouble on his way home, and my father happened to know who wanted to harm my poor brother." Jaime's tone was wrong, and Violet heard a hint of murderous intent. "I ordered the arrest of Tyrion for his crimes," Duke Stark said arrogantly. She was puzzled by the rigidity and arrogance of this man. He was clearly surrounded by people, but he was still so unscrupulous. Did he think that the equally arrogant King's Lair would not dare to take action? Jaime Lannister drew his sword and kicked his horse forward. "Draw your sword, Lord Ned. Although I wish I could kill you like I killed the Mad King, the honor of a knight only allows me to kill you with a sword." The situation suddenly became tense. The soldiers blocking the road turned their heads to focus on the confrontation in the middle of the street. As Jaime drew his sword, everyone showed their weapons and the fight was about to break out. "Master, what should we do? Who should we help?" Myrcella looked confused. "On one side is my uncle, and on the other side is the Prime Minister. I don't understand." Violet observed the situation nervously. Her perspective was different from that of ordinary people. She was looking for the core with black mist wrapped around her body, and the gray mist was not considered. At this moment, she couldn't judge. It was a situation of 4 to 20 on Fengyu Street. Most of the nearby residents watched from a distance, and no one intervened. The Starks were all on horseback, and maybe they could force their way out. But that was not what she cared about. History has developed to this point. We can't just look at the surface, but pay attention to the deeper part. She couldn't find the source of the black mist, but the whole street was clearly shrouded in it. The street became even quieter. The rain seemed to have sensed the unusual atmosphere and weakened. She could now hear the conversation on the street more clearly. "You killed me," Lord Stark said contemptuously. "The little devil in Catelyn's hand will not escape death." This man was still strong, provoking the king's lair with a face that made people want to kick him. Jaime urged his horse forward and stabbed forward with his gilded sword. Myrcella screamed on his side. The king's lair did not pierce Lord Ned, he just poked Ned's chest with his sword. "Will she?" "Noble Catelyn Tully of Riverrun, murder a hostage who has no ability to resist." "I don't think she can't do it." Jaime sighed in frustration, "But I don't want to gamble my brother's life with a woman's sense of honor." The sword was put back into the sheath. "Perhaps you can run to Robert with sobs and complain that I bullied you." Jaime's face was full of sarcasm and contempt. "I doubt that the beloved king cares at all." Jaime turned his horse's head. The situation seemed to be getting better and the situation was becoming relaxed. "I'm scared to death, my dear Violet. I don't know what to do. Maybe I should stand on Uncle Jaime's side, but this is not a place for fighting, and he shouldn't go to Lord Ned privately. They should ask their father for justice." Perhaps to vent pressure, Myrcella kept talking on the side. The streets also regained their popularity. There were buzzing voices coming from the buildings on both sides and the alleys. No one could tell how many people were hiding in the dark just by looking at the surface. Violet didn't think the matter was over. The black fog remained. The great fog of the general trend did not become thinner. There must be something wrong. She really didn't have Sig's ability. If it were him, he would definitely find the clues of the problem at the beginning. The king's lair rode past the red cloaks. "Traitor, do not harm Lord Stark." "As you command." Black mists emanated from everyone present, swaying everywhere, like venomous snakes in the deep night world. Violet drew a sword and urged her horse to move forward as the soldiers and Myrcella looked on in amazement. The horse rose up with strength and flew over the heads of 4 soldiers. "But, we can't let him get away with this." The king's lair smiled. "Kill all his men." "No." Lord Stark screamed and drew his sword. Jaime rode away. The Lannister soldiers gathered around him. Lord Stark swung his sword and slashed, and the red cloaks dodged. The Hand's captain of the guard, Jory, leapt forward with his horse and stomped a soldier's face with his horse's hoof. With a sickening crack, Jory broke through the siege. The other 2 guards of the Duke were not so lucky. One of them was dragged off the dying horse and hacked to pieces. The other was the brave warrior who had driven back 5 or 6 warriors, but was pierced through the back by a spear. The Duke wailed and charged with his sword. His target was Traeger, the captain of the Lannister guard. The swords clashed, and Violet rode over to block Traeger's sword. He would have been hit on the head. "Sword dancer, you are also involved." Lord Stark was furious and swung his sword horizontally. His sword was fierce. Violet did not dare to block it, but turned the horse's head. The rapier in her left hand was light and agile, piercing the horse's front leg. The horse stood up and threw the Duke off his back. Traeger looked up at her in confusion, as if wondering where she came from. Violet put away her sword and reached out to grab Traeger's collar. She lifted the big man with astonishing strength and put the rapier against his neck. "Stop it. Otherwise he's finished." The horse's hooves stomped across the ground, and Violet carried Traeger around in a circle, letting every red-cloaked warrior see clearly that their commander had been captured. "Stop. I am Robert Baratheon, and I hereby announce the royal intervention. Drop your weapons, and anyone who dares to draw a sword will be treated as a traitor." Myrcella let her hair down and rode her horse back and forth in the chaotic streets of love. Wherever she went, the red cloaks avoided her. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novellas. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 62 Chaos. When he heard the news, Robert was worrying about the damned remnants. All the important ministers deserved to die. May the gods have mercy on him. He was surrounded by bastards. Ned was a blockhead and a fool. The Targaryen girl was already pregnant with a dangerous boy, but he was still talking about morality. When 100,000 roaring warriors crossed the narrow sea and wreaked havoc in the 7 kingdoms, would it be righteousness? It was not enough to have an ignorant and easily abandoned prime minister. Grand Maester Pycelle was basically a Lannister dog. Except for matters related to the great Lord Theon, he would get ambiguous answers when asked about other matters. Barristan was reliable, but he was also a stubborn person, even more inflexible than Ned. Among the remaining important ministers, his brother Renly was just a show-off. Everything was a game to him. The only ones who could really be used were Littlefinger and Viserys, but unfortunately one was always thinking about brothels and the other was not a man at all. They couldn't think of any normal solution. Their strategies were either poison or mercenaries. The eunuch's opinion was to pay off the assassins and use a colorless and odorless poison to kill the girl and the bastard in her belly. The dwarf's opinion was to bribe the governors of Penrose and let them design a plan to make the girl fall out of favor first and then pay mercenaries to kill her. Damn it, none of the opinions pleased him. If he were 10 years younger and not so fat, he would definitely go to war himself, cross the narrow sea, flatten the so-called trading city-states, and then use the coastal cities as a stepping stone to go deep into the Dothraki Sea and hunt down the remnants of the conquerors. In the end, I am still unable to do it. He sighed, and so much ambition turned into this sigh and left him. Bad news came. The news was complicated and contradictory. Some said that the hand of the king fought with a king's guard, some said that Lord Ned and Lord Jaime were jealous of each other for a woman, and some said that Ned killed the king's lair, and the guards of the Lannister family intercepted the prime minister's guards in revenge. When Robert scolded all the people who delivered the message and asked them to take responsibility for what they said, the cowards shut up one by one. Something must have happened, and it involved two careless people. Ned and Jaime. It was as if he owed them money in his previous life. 7 layers of hell. Now even Trisella came to mess things up. As if I killed Marcella, God save me. This was not a royal meeting, but all the adults in the court came in full force. Trisella stood aside with a face as red as liver. Women should not care about men's affairs. They are so weak, why bother to meddle in them? The ministers stood on the stage, and the seats on both sides were crowded with people. Ned, who was in the audience, had a bitter face, as if the 7 kingdoms owed him money. The sword dancer and Marcella were caught in the rain. God had mercy on them. Women should not be caught in the rain. A cold could take away their beauty or even their lives. Robert did not dare to go to see the two of them. Not only was he heartbroken, but if Joffrey came back and found that Violet was in trouble, how would he explain it? Damn you all. He hated himself the most. Was his prestige so weak that his subjects could no longer believe in his fairness? He looked at Pycelle first. Old and wise, Robert didn't need to say anything. The old man stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, the princess and the sword dancer are fine. I gave them hot honey mixed with wine. They will be fine after a sweat." Robert nodded, and his heart was finally at ease. The damn Iron Throne, there are blades everywhere. Not only does it hurt your boat to sit on it, but it is also easy to cut your pants. Why are the bastards fighting for it? Whoever wants to sit on it can sit on it. He even suspected that the regicide was not forced to give up the throne by Ned. The cunning guy knew that this position was uncomfortable. He glanced at the people involved. Among the parties involved, the regicide was not there, and only the captain of the Lannister guard, Traeger, was left standing below his punishment. Who can tell me what's going on? Is King's Landing still the capital? Blocking the road and fighting in public? No, Your Majesty. Trisella stood up beside him. This man. She pointed at Ned. He kidnapped my brother. He murdered my son and tried to assassinate my wife. He found his dagger with the assassin. Ned looked up and said angrily, all right. 7 hells. Can you all save your breath? We are not discussing the North now, but the private fight that happened here in the Street of Love. Not only did you make the capital a mess, but you also involved Marcella and the sword dancer. Who can tell me how the damn little devil's matter was related to my daughter? Did she assassinate your son, or did she kidnap the little devil? He pointed at the two of them in turn. Ned and Trisella, these two guys didn't settle it, and they quarreled in the court. He didn't know how to end it. While the two were speechless, he found Violet. Joffrey had a good eye. If Sansa had not been designated as his fiancée, it would have been her turn. Sword dancer, you are the only one who has no vested interest in the matter. Tell me what happened and why the princess was involved in the private fight. He winked at her, hoping that she was smart enough. The sword dancer, wrapped in a large bath towel, stood beside Marcella. The two looked like sisters. She was even more elegant than Trisella. She took a step forward and said, Your Majesty, the lesson I prepared for the princess today was to observe the scenery at King's Landing. I encountered heavy rain on the way and wanted to go back quickly. I didn't expect to be blocked by the Lannister warriors at the intersection and couldn't move forward. Then I saw the conflict between the two adults. I wanted to mediate the fight, but I didn't expect to let the princess get involved. It was my fault. She said softly. The sword dancer who bowed her head to admit her mistake was lovable and I really wanted to hug her. You were Marcella's guard, but you ran away to do other things. Where is your honor? What is your responsibility? You are simply unworthy of your identity as a knight. Tressailles scolded her loudly. Robert almost slammed the table and stood up. This woman can't do anything except pointing fingers at others. It's not Violet's fault. I insisted on breaking in, and I asked her to help. Myrcella was very excited. Although it was wrong for the Prime Minister to arrest Uncle Tyrion, it was Uncle Jaime's fault to gather so many soldiers to kill people in the street. I asked Violet to help separate the two. This order was too ishful, and she was scolded. It's my fault. Myrcella sobbed and said. Robert's anger turned into a sigh and disappeared. Look at little Myrcella. You've been worrying about your two damn brothers. If they were half as sensible as she is, things wouldn't have turned out like this. Robert yelled at Tressailles. And you, Ned, tell your Catelyn to let Tyrion go. He's a dwarf and has never been appreciated since he was a child. Your little Bran has nothing to do with him. Don't believe that nonsense. Why did Tyrion kill little Bran and leave his dagger at the scene? No idiot in the world would hire someone to kill someone and return the sword to the other person. Use your wood brain to think about it. Is this possible? You almost killed my daughter today. I don't want it to happen again. Look at what you've done. 4 Lannisters died and 3 of you died. This matter ends here. But he captured my brother. Who the hell is he? He deserves to die if he dares to capture my brother and touch our Lannisters. Tressailles yelled at him. Woman. Don't challenge my patience. I am the king. I don't care what you damn Lannisters think. This matter ends here. Catelyn will release the little devil, and then I don't want to hear about this matter again. I don't want to hear a word. Robert roared back, louder than Tressailles. Are you still a man? Tressailles was so angry that her whole body was shaking, and her golden hair seemed to stand up. Your wife was bullied, but you didn't go to get her back, and you still have the nerve to let the matter end. Which king is as cowardly as you? I think our genders are mixed up. You should be the queen and I will be the king. Robert realized that he rushed out and put away most of his strength, but the queen's body still flew out. The scene was in chaos. The women screamed and the ministers were in a panic. Robert's head was dizzy and he didn't understand what he had done for a while. Mom. Myrcella rushed over and hugged Tressailles in her arms. Her face was swollen. Guilt made his cheeks hot. You shouldn't hit a woman. What's wrong with me? He was actually mad at her. The peace over the years not only corroded his muscles, but also his spirit. This will be my medal. Tressailles stood up proudly and stared at him provocatively. Myrcella was panicked, and tears were in her eyes. Hey. Keep it if you like it. Robert rushed down the throne. Ned seemed to want to say something. Take back what you want to say. I've had enough. Let someone put the little devil back. He walked towards the exit excitedly, and people stepped back to make way. He turned around and threw the brooch of the king's hand to Ned. Don't take this. If you give up next time, I swear I will chop off your head. Don't object, this is the king's order. 7 gods, can't you let me be quiet for a while? Before he went crazy, Robert left the court. He urgently needed to find a place to vent. He needed the taste of blood to recall the good old days. Otherwise, he might become the first king of the 7 kingdoms to throw away the crown and run away. I really want to see the faces of the important officials when they find out that I'm missing. Chapter 63. Towards the sunset land. The horse that rides the world doesn't need an iron chair. He tried to control his emotions, pursing his lips to prevent his roar from scaring his moon and stars. The prophecy says that the horse will travel to the end of the world. She said gently. The end of the world is the black salty sea. His anger was accumulating in his chest. No horse can cross the poisonous water. There are thousands of ships in the free trade city. Donnie repeated again. He hated her nagging. They are like wooden horses with hundreds of legs, able to spread their wings in the wind and jump across the poisonous water. Woman, stop talking. He slapped the little hands away angrily. The beautiful purple eyes turned red. She didn't cry but tried to smile. Her fake smile was ugly. He blamed himself a little. She was his moon and star. She would give birth to a horse that rides the world for him. He should give her more in return instead of making her sad. The khalasar will go east, across the Red Waste, to the Shadowlands, he told her for the first time, after years of never telling anyone his dream. From the Shadowlands where the ghost grass grows, turn south to the Jade Sea and conquer Ai. Donnie's reaction disappointed her. She knew nothing of his grand plan. She didn't know how big his dream was. No Khal had ever dreamed as big as he did, let alone control such a vast area. He didn't tell others because he didn't want them to be scared, overwhelmed by his grand and magnificent dream, but the woman of Westeros, his wife, didn't understand. She valued the 7 kingdoms too much, the wild kingdom of the Sunset Lands. She even compared the 7 kingdoms to the Dothraki. How sad. But that's how women are, they often believe some lies and ignore the true vastness and majesty. If it was her brother, Viserys, that man would understand him. What did that man think? Did he also want his khalasar to send people to the Sunset Lands? Drogo rejected the woman's hands of reconciliation. I will go hunt Halaka. If you are lucky, you will see me dragging the body of the White Lion tonight. All the khalasar will know that I am taking risks for you, and the honor of killing Halaka will belong to you. This is his greatest concession, hoping that she will forget the 7 kingdoms. Leaving the tent and mounting the horse, the figure of Viserys appeared in his mind again. He shook his head to put aside his worries, and waited for Viserys to come to him, and then told him his dream. That man is very powerful. He will definitely agree with him. Let his son conquer the Sunset Lands, and Dany will be happy then. The wound on his leg was aching slightly, and the hairless man cleaned the wound for him and disinfected it with strong wine. He was very excited. Halaka is not an ordinary prey. They are agile, strong and extremely lethal. The fight just now is comparable to the most thrilling battle he had ever participated in. Its claws are extremely sharp. Whether it is a human or a horse, being scratched by its claws will definitely cause the intestines to be pierced in the stomach. Its roar is amazing and has the effect of subduing war horses. The red horse under his crotch was the king of horses, but he was still frightened by Halaka's roar and was half a beat slower. The lion's claws easily cut through his leggings. With just a slight scratch, he began to bleed. Halaka's mouth full of sharp teeth was even more terrifying. He had seen his father's blood riders being bitten off, both man and horse. Every hunt for Halaka was a test of life and death, more frightening than war. He and his blood riders were the bravest warriors in the Dothraki. They defeated Halaka with tacit cooperation, fearless courage and superb skills. 4 arcs were inserted into its neck, ribs and lower back. Halaka's dying struggle was a real nightmare. He was scratched in the calf, Khala's horse was disemboweled, Kotal was injured in the shoulder, and Hadley was knocked away by the beast. Fortunately, the mad beast could not hold on for too long, otherwise he and his blood riders would have been wiped out. The more dangerous the battle, the sweeter the fruits of victory. They dragged Hiraka's body back, and the tribesmen in Metal showed awe. Dany must see the results of the battle, so that she would understand his bravery and realize that there are more meaningful places to conquer in the Dothraki Sea, and the Iron Throne in the Sunset Land can be dealt with later. The closer the Khals got to Khaleesi, the stranger the tribesmen looked. They even lacked interest in Hiraka's body. Something must have happened. Drogo told the blood riders to take it slow, and he rode forward first. Khaleesi's tent was full of people. Her Westeros guards also appeared outside the tent. Drogo's heartbeat accelerated. He didn't want to do this, just to leave and hunt. He wanted to give her the best, his moon and stars, the gods on the holy mountain, please bless him to see her again. He will never be cruel to her again in the future, but it's just the Sunset Land, and she wants the Iron Throne. What does it matter if the howling warriors are not good at water battles? He can ask the trading cities to provide wooden horses for the warriors to cross the salt water. As long as there's land on the sunset, as long as there are horses for the horses to gallop, what can stop him in his khalasar? He prayed that his moon and stars must be safe. Dany, who was pregnant, leaned back in the chair. She looked very bad and panicked. Drogo's nose was sour, and the sense of relief was indescribable. He couldn't wait to come to her side. My moon and stars, I'm glad you're okay. Tell me what happened, why everyone in the khalasar is so panicked, why your Khas, everyone is so heavy. Dany looked at the entrance, and the Westeros guards walked in, and Drogo also walked into the tent. The two told each other what happened. In order to relax, Dany took a few people to the market in the west early in the morning. There happened to be a caravan from Westeros there. Dany missed her home tent very much. Whenever she had the chance, she would go to the place where the Westeros caravan was, or take a look, maybe exchange some small things, or bring some snacks. Her Westeros guard told him that in order to receive the letter from her brother, he first went to find the leader of the caravan. When he met them again, Dany was at a wine merchant. The wine merchant treated her to taste the fruit wine very attentively. Dany wanted to bring some back to taste with him. Drogo's heart was warmed. There were many people who liked wine in the whole khalasar, but few liked fruit wine. He tasted these sweet wines when he traded with merchants in the trading city. He liked fruit wine, but he was embarrassed to tell his people. How could the great Khal like sweet wine like a woman? As the greatest Khal of Dothraki, he could only accept people's misunderstanding and endure it. Dany must know that she understood him. She didn't like wine herself, so it must be prepared for him. What a good woman, but he couldn't even satisfy her little wish. Is he really so stingy? The Westeros guard continued to describe the scene. He noticed that the wine merchant was unusual. He took back the wine that was originally given to Donnie and wanted to give her something better. Donnie was embarrassed and wanted to exchange it with a silver medal, but the wine merchant refused. This aroused my suspicion. The Westfold guard's eyes flashed with caution and wisdom. Drogo believed in this man. He could see that the loyalty of the Westfold guard was sincere. I asked the wine merchant to drink his own wine, but he refused and tried to escape. Drogo was so angry that he wanted to kill someone, but he held back in order not to scare Donnie. She was pale and melancholy. She had experienced enough today and could not be to worry again. What happened next? Drogo asked in a flat tone. My whip tripped his leg, and the guards of the caravan captured him. Drogo wagged. The one who poisoned is the first one, the Westfold guard added, but it will definitely not be the last. Many people will take risks for the title of nobility. Drogo's anger was still there, but it was like the lava under the ground, making him feel depressed. Whoever sells poison wants to escape from my moon, so let him run after her. His tone was calm, but his vision was blood red. Drogo and Jorah, choose any horse from my herd, except my red horse and Khaleesi's silver horse, and you can ride it away as long as you like. I give you gifts to thank you for your merits. He stood up and walked out of the tent. A large number of khalasars gathered outside the tent, including khalasar's bandits and his blood riders. Drogo's son, Roevel, riding the world's horse, I will give him a gift. I will give him the iron chair that his mother's father once sat on, and I will give him the 7 kingdoms of the land of the setting sun. Drogo walked into the crowd, close to the blazing bonfire, raised his fist, and roared at the top of his voice. I will take my khalasar and walk west to the end of the world, ride a wooden horse across the black salt water, and do what other khals cannot do. I will kill the men in iron clothes, tear down their stone houses, and take their women and children as slaves. I will bring their useless idols back to Vzdothrake and pay homage to the Mother of Mountains. He was full of energy and anger, and the tribes around him roared again and again. I, Drogo, son of Alb, swear before the Mother of Mountains, and on the stars of the sky. Chapter 64. Too many persons to split. Please assure me that you have no will towards the 7 kingdoms. Joffrey said seriously, I don't understand or comprehend what you have done. You let Violet approach me, taught me swordsmanship, and made me a knight. You saved my uncle from danger. But you are a Targaryen. There should be a blood feud between us. Why do you do all this? Are you really a wizard? In the temporary camp set up by the mountain people, several people sat together. The Hound, Bronn, Tyrion, his 2 servants and Joffrey. Their eyes were focused on Sigurd. Why hide for me? Why didn't you expose me in front of Lady Stark, or explain my identity to Lady Lysa? With the strength of the Vale of Arryn, maybe they can keep me and eliminate the disaster for the 7 kingdoms. Sigurd looked at everyone seriously and asked instead of answering. I don't do things that are not beneficial. Bronn spread his hands. King Robert's latest bounty is that anyone who can obtain the head of a Targaryen remnant can be directly promoted to a noble based on his merits and obtain the right to pay taxes on a fertile piece of land next to Winterfell. Sieg seemed to be talking about someone else's business. Are you still insisting that there's no benefit? Bronn lowered his head and thought, his face uncertain, and then shook his head. No, you have to live to spend the money you make. His eyes fell on the Hound. My responsibility is to protect the prince. No one ordered me to kill you. On his burnt face, under his melted eyelids, his sharp eyes revealed. Don't count me out, you are at least my savior. Although I am half human, I understand what life-saving grace is. The little devil blinked his eyes and answered seriously. We will follow Lord Tyrion's opinion. The 2 servants said in unison. Don't worry, I carefully selected the 2 of them, and I will keep my mouth shut even to the Lannister family. The little devil said, meeting his gaze. Sig fixed his eyes on Joffrey. My dear prince, you ask me why. It's hard for me to answer because many things are beyond your understanding. He stood up, sat beside him, and patted his shoulder. I can only make you believe me. I have no will towards humans. My enemy is that. He pointed to the sky. Everyone present had different expressions. I can tell you a short-term goal. I will join the men in black and work with my brothers on the wall to deal with the threat from the north. So I can trust you and Violet. Joffrey was very anxious. I know you can be trusted. If you are really an enemy of the kingdom, I really don't know what to do or how to face her. I believe in you, even if you are lying to me, I will admit it. If I find out that you are lying, I will kill you. The Hound said in an emotionless tone. Dear wizard, are you from Ally? The little devil's eyes flickered. The dwarf was testing. No, I am an ordinary person. Unlike most people, I have not sold my soul to anything, whether it is the devil or the gods. The archbishop would not want to see someone like you. The little devil nodded and said goodbye to him. Sig left Joffrey and others. He did not alarm the mountain people, but ran on foot at the fastest speed in the deep mountains and dense forests. The situation is changing faster and faster. Many things are beyond his expectations. Some advance arrangements must be adjusted. The problem he is facing now is not how difficult the situation has become, but that he is unable to do everything. Violet just stopped a fight between wolves and lions, allowing Eddard Stark to escape, but this state seems to be unsustainable. It is difficult to see the truth behind the matter with her ability alone. Robert and Ned, the two brothers in distress, may die at any time. They are both extremely important figures. Once they die prematurely, it will not only have a huge impact on the world, but also cause irreparable damage to his plan. He has not been blinded by his own power. He knows that now that his individual power is infinitely close to that of God, his most vulnerable aspect is himself. He was just one person, no matter how strong he was only one person, and with Violet, there were only two of them. If the general situation really changed drastically, their power would hardly affect the overall situation, so they had to prepare in advance before the general situation was established. He doubted whether the layout of King's Landing would have enough time to affect the general trend, or whether his layout was strong enough to withstand the pressure and impact of the general trend. Another problem came from the continent of Essos. Drogo, the chess piece he had laid out in advance, and his stepsister Dany were on the road of no return. The entanglement of various different forces, including the general trend and the unpredictable chaos, made him feel the danger of collapse. He had too little preparation in the continent of Essos, and Drogo alone could not support the situation. He anticipated Drogo's fate. Once he died, the direction of the situation would be out of control, and he had to rush to the grassland as soon as possible to control the situation. But he could not split himself to take care of King's Landing and the grassland at the same time. He was afraid that the problems in the grassland would be solved, and something irreversible would happen in King's Landing. In his layout, the two key things must be completed in King's Landing. Will he have time to run in both places? The answer is obviously no. He could only take care of one thing at a time. Could Violet really handle King's Landing? Even at the most critical moment, could he control her body and turn the tide? Many questions lingered in his mind, and he thought about solutions while flying between mountains and dense forests. A three-eyed raven glided beside him, staring at him with sharp eyes, as if to see through him completely. Sig reached into his pocket and took out a copper coin. With the crisp sound of metal breaking, the body of the three-eyed raven exploded at the same time, and it didn't even have time to scream. An idea suddenly came to him, and he turned to the southeast. Sig avoided the sight of the patrolmen and left the dock area of Dragonstone. He entered the country on a supply merchant ship during the day. Unlike the first time he arrived, he chose to arrive late at night to avoid all ears. Dragonstone Castle has a hideous and gloomy appearance. On the walls of ancient Valyria, dense gargoyles squat and stand. They scan the whole city with indifferent eyes, making it difficult for newcomers to sleep and eat. Sig is like an old resident of the island. He easily finds the blind spot of the city defense, climbs up to the top of the city as fast as a monkey, and goes straight to the stone drum tower under the indifferent gaze of the gargoyles. The stone drum tower is the main tower of the fortress. Whenever a storm comes, its ancient walls will rumble and echo, hence the name. The cells in the dungeon under the main tower are hot and humid. It is said that the passages and hidden ladders here can reach the center of Dragon Mountain as far as possible. Several arched high stone bridges connect the stone drum tower with the surrounding auxiliary towers in the air, forming a special defense structure that is interconnected and independent of each other. Arriving at the bottom of the stone drum tower, he sneaked in after just a little identification of the direction. Relying on speed and shadows, Sig sneaked in the heavily guarded tower as if he was in an empty space. His destination is the table hall. This is a circular hall located at the top of the stone drum tower. The four tall narrow windows in the room face east, west, south and north. Behind a huge wooden table in the hall, the table is carved with a detailed map of Westeros. During the Conquest War, Aegon the Conqueror used it to draw up battle plans. The map table is more than 50 feet long, with the widest point being about half of its length and the narrowest point less than 4 feet. The position corresponding to Dragonstone has been carefully designed to correspond to the seats on the high platform, so that everything on the table can be seen. He has only been here once, but he knows that anyone who was in charge of Dragonstone will regard this as the main location for discussing major events. The person he is looking for is sitting in the chair. This person wears a tight leather vest and brown coarse wool trousers. His limbs are strong, his face is tight, and his skin has been exposed to the sun for a long time, giving people the effect of being hard as iron. There is only a row of fine black hair on his head, which surrounds his ears. He has a short and neat beard that covers his square chin and sunken cheekbones. Sid came to him silently, opposite of the Maxwell. Under a pair of thick eyebrows, scarred deep blue eyes stared over, and the mouth that was always accompanied by frowns, anger and harsh words was tightly pursed. You don't seem surprised by my arrival. Sid's opening remarks like an old friend were met with silence and ruthless gazes. Do you really know how much others hate you? If you are half as kind as ordinary people, Windstopper can't belong to Renly. I hope you are not here to talk nonsense. If you don't have something important to do, disappear immediately. Stannis Baratheon's words were without a trace of emotion. Chapter 65. Countermeasures in the Table Hall. 1. Of course I'm here for something, and it's good for you. Viserys Targaryen walked out of the shadows. He had changed a lot since the first time they met. His silver-white hair had been dyed black, and his purple eyes had somehow turned black. He came to the long table fearlessly, looked around, and pushed down several chess pieces representing the noble forces with his hands. Don't waste your time. No one will work for you. No one likes you. I know what you said, but I still have to try. Stannis put the chess pieces back in place. Maybe there are still some people who value honor and responsibility among these people. Even if there's one person like this, my layout will not be in vain. Viserys showed a disgusting smile at the corner of his mouth, just like his impression of Roever. I thought you would be more self-aware. He shook his head. I came here to show you a clear way. He held the chess pieces representing a side in his hand. It was not known whether it was a trick or a spell, but the chess pieces turned black and were placed next to King's Landing. What you need to do is send people here as soon as possible. Stannis was confused. He didn't understand what the remnants of the Targaryen family meant. How many people do you want me to send to King's Landing? That is a fortress that is difficult to capture. If it weren't for the Lannisters' false surrender, the war might have continued for several years. Haha, you are not stupid enough to think that I asked you to send people to capture the Red Castle. The laughter was harsh, and Lannister tried hard not to burst out. What do you mean? You need to send the most elite guards, not many, 100 will be enough. Don't forget that you have to go too. Sneak into King's Landing, I want you to rescue your brother and Eddard Stark. Viserys said stupid things and swayed with self-satisfaction. Come here. There are assassins. Stannis shouted. He was sure that Viserys not only had a problem with his brain, but also was mentally ill. It was wrong for him to have fantasies about this guy. Guards, are they all dead? There are assassins here. Viserys stared at him with a smile. Stannis realized that the guards on the other side of the door could not hear his shouting. Are you a wizard? No, this is the second time this month that I have denied the wizard speculation. Can't there be some other existences in your minds, such as demons, White Walkers, souls and the like? Can't you be more imaginative? Viserys teased him. What do you want? You've seen that I don't want to stay on this island and rot. Robert is simply too partial. If I stay at King's Landing, I will die sooner or later, whether it's at the hands of the Lannisters or my own relatives. This is why I am willing to give you a chance, thinking that maybe you can bring me a ray of hope in the midst of heavy siege. It seems that I was wrong, you are simply a lunatic. Viserys put away his smile. I know your troubles very well, and I understand your situation. You are not liked by everyone, but you still participate in the action to overthrow the Lannisters. Haven't you thought about the consequences? So what if I have thought about it? I am this kind of person. Honor, principles, and obligations are my principles of action. Even if I suffer more injustice, I will still do it. The old man Oberyn was not secretive and was killed, and he also hurt me. If I don't leave King's Landing, both the Lannisters and my brother will kill me. I have no choice. He sighed. I am a fool. Why am I telling you this? You can't even protect yourself. How can you help me? You can't even protect yourself. Yes, idiot, don't you know? As long as someone has your head, they can exchange it for a title in King's Landing. My good brother hates you to the core. For 18 years, there has not been a day that he didn't want to kill you all. And you actually wanted to save him. From whom? Is there really anyone who dares to catch his attention? Viserys scratched his head. It's really a headache. Do you really think that it was the Lannisters who killed Oberyn? Do you think that the secrets you investigated were exposed, and Oberyn was killed? Isn't it? Even the secrets you know were like notices written in the square. He said bitterly. Why are the Queen and the King's Lair still alive? With your understanding of Robert, who would he let go after he knew that the 3 children were not his own? Shouldn't Robert chase them thousands of miles to kill a couple, and then chop off their children and hang their heads on the walls of the Red Castle? Stannis was speechless for a moment. He realized what he had missed. Could it be that their secret investigation was not exposed, and Oberyn died for other reasons? Did the old man really have a strange disease? The long table twisted in front of his eyes, and he felt a breathless feeling. If it was not because the secret was exposed, why did he flee back to Dragonstone like this? Of course, it's to meet me. Viserys responded quickly as if he had heard his inner voice. He felt creepy. The man in front of him also became mysterious in his eyes. Who are you? The Viserys I know doesn't have such ability. He reached out and grasped the hilt of the sword. Viserys ignored his threat and said, the secret is about to be exposed. There's a fool, a guy who was 100 times dumber than you and During combined. He followed the clues left by the two of you and successfully uncovered the secret, and planned to tell Robert the truth. Very good, all the Lannisters deserve to die, at least Robert will not be deceived, and the throne will not fall into the hands of outsiders. Stannis said angrily. He knew very well that even if there was no heir, Robert would not pass the throne to him. Maybe it was Renly, or maybe it was his illegitimate son. In any case, his brother would never face himself. This was his sorrow, and also the sorrow of the Baratheon family. Naive. Viserys paced in front of the long table. You underestimate the Lannisters. Lord Tywin is not someone you can easily mess with. Not only does he possess the most wealth in the Seven Kingdoms, he is also a powerful figure. Which of the daughters and sons he trained is easy to deal with? The dangerous ones are not them, but your brother who was more tough and strategic, and the perfect knight, Eddard Stark. His anger was uncontrollable. He couldn't help but stand up from his seat and paced continuously. What does this have to do with me? It would be better if they were all killed by the Lannisters. They ignored me, that diligent and loyal brother, and let others sit in high positions. It's their own fault. And Stark, he is Robert's biological brother, not me. Robert loves him 100 times more than me, his real brother with blood ties. So you hate them. Viserys left him unable to refute. I thought you were very capable, a true monarch, and had the ability to control the world. It seems I was wrong. It's not the remnant's place to judge me. He said angrily, but admitted in his heart that maybe this guy was right. You need to think about the overall situation, just like we did when we first met. If you had captured me and sent me to King's Landing, it would not have been any good for you, but it might have given someone a handle. On the contrary, releasing me, although not necessarily beneficial to the Seven Kingdoms, would not have been any harm in the short term. Viserys paced leisurely in front of him, as if he were a maester in the citadel. The same is true for King's Landing. You, Infanta, should consider what is good for you and whether it can help you change your current situation, instead of talking about the remnant all day long. Since I can evade the heavily guarded table hall so easily, how can I not be able to get close to the bigwigs in King's Landing? Since I have the ability to explore the deepest secrets, no matter how ridiculous my information is, you should consider the possibility that these absurdities can become true. Stannis pulled his collar uncomfortably, sat down and stood up again. Although he was unwilling to admit it, he began to think about the possibility that both Robert and Eddard Stark were controlled or even killed by the Lannisters according to what Viserys said. The undesirable result appeared in his mind. He exhaled a breath of foul air. If the Lannisters take control, I will definitely be their primary target. Viserys shook his finger lightly, and he looked like he deserved a beating. I understand what you mean. You told me to pay attention. Even if Robert is still in power, he can no longer control the Lannisters. It is only a matter of time before the throne changes and the power falls into someone else's hands. Viserys nodded and clapped his hands. Stannis didn't believe that he was really praising him. You are worthy of being Lord Stannis. It took you so long to deduce such an obvious conclusion. No wonder you have a strong navy and control a transportation hub of the Seven Kingdoms, but you don't know how to use it. No matter what Robert thought at the beginning, he actually gave you Dragonstone, which was the best resource. It's a pity that you don't know how to use it, and you regard the useless Windsor Castle as more important than anything else. Stannis couldn't hide his astonishment. He repeatedly chewed over what Viserys meant. Do you think Dragonstone has some resources that can accomplish great things? Don't you know why the Conqueror chose Dragonstone as his base and how he started? Viserys hit his fist with his hand. You don't really think that my ancestors conquered the Seven Kingdoms with the help of dragons? Isn't it? He felt like he was being treated like a fool. Chapter 66. Countermeasures in the Table Hall. 2. You take me for a fool. Stannis' momentum was much lower than before. If you can refute it, or see the secret of the Conqueror's success, I will naturally apologize to you. Sigurd had already won. Stannis believed him. This was the first step to success. Without the reinforcements from Dragonstone, Violet would have a miserable ending. He drew the greatsword from his back. Stannis just stood there and watched him draw the sword. Your Majesty, your determination is indeed better than that of ordinary people. If you had a good brain, you wouldn't have cowered here. Are you praising me or slandering me? Stannis said coldly. Both. Sigurd happily threw the greatsword aside. Stannis looked stunned. He took advantage of the opportunity to make provocative gestures, which made the noble admiral gnashing his teeth in hatred. The cloth strip used as a scabbard was just a cover, and the real scabbard was hidden under the cloth strip. The cover made of special material turned into a leather roll after the cloth strip was loosened. Sig opened the leather scroll on the long table, and the world map of the 3 continents and 4 seas appeared in front of Stannis. The latter took a breath and his face turned red because he forgot to exhale. Please breathe, Your Majesty. I will be very worried if you die because of this. Sig continued to tease Stannis, making fun of such a serious person, making him feel freshness and fun. Your Majesty is the title of a king, are you mocking me? Stannis' counterattack was weak. Don't worry about boring things. Sig urged Stannis to concentrate. This is the full map of the world. You can see 3 continents and 4 oceans. If you want to be more poetic, you can also put the Dothraki Sea and the Devilgrass Sea side by side. 3 continents and 6 oceans seems to be good. Without waiting for Stannis to comment, he pointed to the continent on the far left of the map. You see, this is the territory of the 7 kingdoms. Westeros is the foundation of the 7 kingdoms. Unfortunately, the continent does not belong to only the 7 kingdoms. In the far north of the wall is the frozen coast in the land of Evereast. It is said that no one has ever been there. Stannis carefully observed the map. He kept studying and pondering the details of the map. Don't look at it anymore. This map is more accurate than all the maps you know. If you find a mistake, it must be your mistake. Sig slapped the map with his hand. The location of Dragonstone Island. Your Majesty, have you found anything? The world is big. Stannis said absent-mindedly. No. The 7 kingdoms are so damn small. I can't express my feelings without cursing here. The world map is obviously not complete yet. It only marks a few places. There are more and wider areas outside the map. He looked like he was disappointed with his friend. And Your Majesty said that you control the Dragonstone Road, which controls the entire east coast of Westeros. Your fleet can threaten all merchant ships going to the 7 kingdoms from other places. Don't you understand what I mean? I don't have a dragon. Just relying on this, Sig almost jumped up and slapped Stannis' bald head. Your brain is crazy. The Conqueror can flatten the 7 kingdoms without dragons. He controls the resources of other continents. All external resources that need to pass through the east coast to be transported to the 7 kingdoms are under your control. You are still talking about a lack of resources. Stannis was stunned. His bald head and even his dark face were glowing. He searched the map frantically, and kept replaying the precious sea routes along the marked routes with his hands. Sig decided to let him go. This map was enough for him to digest. He lied. This map did not exist in this world. It was a cheat. With the current human technology, even if all the power of wizards and the Citadel is used, it is impossible to make it. This is the crystallization of his ability. In order to expand Stannis' knowledge, Sig also spent a lot of effort. He quietly left the table hall. Today will be a sleepless night for Stannis. Late at night the next day, Stannis sat alone in front of the map to study the world. Sig appeared in front of him again quietly. Where have you been? I tried my best to find you. Stannis said straightforwardly. What Sig liked most about this person was that he didn't talk nonsense. I went to visit Shine. Poor little thing, I have never seen a child more sad than her. Sig told the truth. If the world map was his bait to lure Stannis to take the bait, Sharon was the rope he tied Stannis to the boat. Stannis, who was as resolute as he was, also looked at him. You will know how unfair the gods are when you see her. The gods have never been fair. The greatest advantage of human beings is to fight for it. Baratheon fell into depression. Sig quietly withdrew. The discussion about fairness reminded him of the past, when he had also shouted like this, until he had a crazy idea. Sig just stayed in the shadows far away, watching the little girl and the jester playing in the afternoon sun. The girl was very shy, as if her existence was shameful. She was an innocent girl with beautiful blue eyes. Unfortunately, her face was not beautiful. She not only inherited her father's square chin, but also a pair of ears from her mother. If she was not beautiful, it would not be disgusting. The terrible defects left by the Grayskull disease she contracted when she was young completely isolated her from the life that should be beautiful. The skin from half of her cheek to the bottom of her neck was hard and necrotic. The surface cracked and peeled off layer by layer, mixed with gray spots, and looked like hard stone. Sig only needed to see at a glance that Sharon's illness could not be cured. Relying on the abilities of humans in this world, even wizards and warlocks could not make her recover. She was having fun playing with adding it a head with different skin colors and patterns. He wore a helmet with hornbills hanging on it, and every time he made a big move, his head would jingle. Even by the standards of the jesters of the time, Ardan could only be considered a failed character. He was not only stupid and dull, but also fat and soft. He would often twitch and tremble for no reason, and most of the time he couldn't even speak clearly. If there was anyone in the world who could be made to laugh by Ardan, it was only Sharon, who lived in loneliness. An ugly girl and a pathetic jester. The situation of Stannis' family was very similar to the situation of his career, which was enough to make people sympathize with him, but most people couldn't sympathize with him after seeing him. Late at night on the third day, Stannis regained his iron-like determination. Owning Dragonstone can accomplish great things, but I have too few people under my command, and even fewer talented people, and time is not on my side. Take your few elite troops, go to King's Landing, save your brother and Stark, and you will have people. Seed looked out the window, the lightless night, the dark narrow sea, like the underworld. You're dreaming. My brother and his half-brother will never be of any use to me. Besides, even if Robert were alive, I would not be qualified to be king. You're really stupid and can't think straight. Sigurd came to the map and threw the black chess piece on King's Landing. The capital will undergo tremendous changes. Robert will die, and the new regent, Eddard Stark, will be beheaded for treason. Just because I asked you to save them doesn't mean that everyone will know that they are still alive. The Lannisters will control the capital in Casterly Rock, the North will raise the banner of rebellion over Ned's death, and Renly will join Highgarden and the nobles you expect to declare themselves king. By then, the Seven Kingdoms will be in chaos, no one will know, and no one wants those two men to be alive. After a while, Stannis recovered. It sounds like a huge conspiracy. Let's not talk about how to control the situation and rescue the two without attracting attention. Even if we really rescue the two, how can you convince them to work for me? Robert is still the king, and Eddard is still the Warden of the North. Stannis was not as surprised as he was 2 days ago. He seemed to be used to the shove butt by Sig. Your Majesty, please allow me to call you this first. People who accomplish great things are not particular about trivial matters. Leave this matter to me. As long as you agree to send someone, other problems will be solved. I suggest you bring the red-robed woman. She will bring you more surprises. Sig closed his mouth and Stannis fell into deep thought. He didn't know that in Sig's eyes, the black mist wrapped around him was changing, and the originally light gray mist on him was getting thicker and thicker. Chapter 67 Red-Robed Woman. The night is long and silent, and the abyss is everywhere. The person who came had a magnetic and pleasant accent. Ordinary people could not stop him, so the person who came was not ordinary. She was dressed in red. The outer coat was a fiery silk dress. Around her neck, there was a red gold collar that was much tighter than a bachelor's necklace, inlaid with a scarlet crystal. Her hair was a deep flame red, shining in the light of the torch. She had a pair of red eyes, the color of carbon red. Her skin was white, almost flawless, beautiful like cream and white jade. She had an elegant and slender figure with beautiful curves. A heart-shaped face. A woman who combined all the elements in one, making it difficult for men to look away. Sig was not one of them. Perhaps this proved that he was no longer human in a sense. In his eyes, she was not even beautiful. The beauty of the sorceress was not natural and innocent, but was carefully carved. Too deliberate to lose the natural harmony, and her red color reminded people of blood. The night is long and silent, and the abyss is everywhere. She repeated this sentence. What is this? Is it the prayer of the Lord of Light? Sig didn't want to pay attention to him. But the woman was very persistent and didn't hesitate to make a bigger noise. He had to turn around. Madam, I have no intention of interfering with your preaching and winning over Stannis, so please ignore me, okay? That's strange. You clearly asked your Majesty to include me in your actions, but you said you had no intention of interfering. She stared at him and walked back and forth beside him. Since the last time we met, your actions have been unpredictable. I'm sure there's no one like you among the warlocks, wizards and many other forces in AI. You don't look like an antique from the Citadel. The way she moved was more like floating, giving people an overly smooth feeling. Her gaze went straight to the heart, making people feel that she valued you very much, but also seemed to not care about you. I would rather you think I'm from the Citadel. Don't look at me like that. In my bones, I belong to the same kind as the maester here, Crescent. She smiled contemptuously. She definitely didn't believe him. Please don't block my way. I still have a lot of things to do. What if I don't want to? She slightly opened her red lips. His eyes were fixed on her lips. Is this a temptation? The red-robed woman glanced at him in a reproachful manner, as if he had ruined an artistic performance. The sight of the red lips disappeared. He was able to move his eyes. Don't force me to do it, dear lady. You are important, really important, so I have to spend some energy to make you behave. This is not good for anyone, so please move aside. The red-robed woman frowned. Her face remained perfect even when she was angry. This kind of beauty was not normal. I have to stop you unless you explain it clearly. Her figure became blurred and moving in his eyes. The castle passage around him twisted and he entered a different world. Sig sighed. It's not that he won't be hit, but he has a far greater insight than ordinary people, even beyond a devil and God. His body has a far greater resistance to any abnormal damage than he can imagine. More importantly, he has the fruit of life and his unlimited recovery ability. He was hit by the red-robed woman's trick, but the impact was minimal. The red-robed woman looked at him in confusion. Her hands were tucked into her sleeves. This is a typical practice of warlocks after launching an attack. Whether the spell fails or faces the enemy's counterattack, they can be fully prepared. She must know that it succeeded, which is why the woman dared to stand still. However, she could not be sure of the effect of the spell, and Sig smiled at her. The woman's face changed slightly and she instinctively retreated. It seemed that some energy was stimulated in her body. Maybe it was offensive magic, but it was more likely a shield or even a space escape spell. Sig approached the woman at the fastest speed. Speed is not a killer. The trump card is his body. He relaxed the control of power, so that the strongest side of himself was released the moment he touched her. He is an abnormality, a heretic. No matter where he is, the laws of the world will be distorted because of him. In order not to be rejected by the world, Sig has been trying hard to control his existence and prevent the laws from changing too much around him. When he gave up the control, his body became a weapon. No matter what the red-robed woman released, no matter how advanced the spell was, no matter how powerful the power was, it all turned into nothingness within the range of his body. In a very small range, he is an abnormality, he is an apostle. The common and predictable sorceress was full of fear. This emotion that should never appear in her was indeed displayed in front of him. She was helpless, like an ordinary woman, with her arms folded, trying to resist his approach. Sig stretched out his hand. He did not use force, nor did he make any unnecessary movements. The woman's wrist was burning in his palm, not like a human. She screamed. The skin where he held it was rapidly festering, and the flames seemed to burst out of her body. Sig watched this scene curiously. The festering and flames were not caused by him. The spell on the woman failed to work, which led to this situation. The power of containment became stronger, and he withdrew his right hand. Her skin returned to a smooth and white color. The red-robed woman looked frightened. I am so disappointed. He spread his hands. I thought the Lord of Light Ruler would be different. He showed a frustrated expression. It's a pity that he is just like this, much worse than the demons and angels I have met. He turned and headed in the previous direction. He came in from the window sill, so he had to go out from there. He didn't care what the red-robed woman thought or how she reacted. Most of the time, people don't understand what real power is. Taking advantage of the night, he lurked in a warship that was about to leave the port for patrol. The next day, he took the opportunity of the patrol ship to check the passing merchant ships and changed his position and transferred to the merchant ship. As he showed to Stannis, the fleet of Dragonstone controlled the foreign trade of the entire Westeros continent and blocked the resources from the outside. He easily transferred through the constantly intersecting merchant ships and finally stopped on an official trade ship returning to Pendos. 5 days later, the continent of Essos was in sight. His journey had just begun. The Dothraki grasslands were an obstacle. Even for him, it was impossible to cross such a long distance in an instant. He remembered a metaphor from a certain world: distance is the best defense. The tyranny of distance can slaughter the most powerful army. Before going to Drogo khalasar, he needed to be fully prepared. In a luxurious governor's mansion, Illyria Mopatis was still so fat. His 10 fingers full of rings tapped the table rhythmically. Dear King, we need to wait. Good news came from Horselard's castle 2 days ago. Princess Dany is pregnant. The Doveclaim predict that she will give birth to a boy, a horse that will ride the world. Khal Drogo's prestige is unprecedentedly high, and his khalasar is stronger and more united than before. Your plan to restore the country requires more patience. The Howling Warriors will soon be able to present you with the Iron Throne. He already knew Illyrio's intelligence, and he also knew what the governor was thinking. Sir Governor, when I regain the throne in the future, I will definitely not forget your strong support. Illyria nodded in satisfaction and thanked him, but I'm afraid this idea will not be realized. Before the governor had time to respond, he pointed his finger at a river near Mirn in the Dothraki Sea. There is a city beside the Skazan River, where the sheep people gather to graze. The governor nodded blankly. When Ogo's khalasar attacked this town, Drogo attacked both of them. Drogo killed Ogo and annexed his khalasar. After a while, Illyrio came back to his senses. His expression was stiff and his smile was awkward. "Ah. Congratulations, Your Majesty. Drogo must have led the khalasar south to raise money. He needs to hire ships to transport the howling warriors to the Seven Kingdoms. Your ambition is just around the corner." "No, my dear governor, Drogo was dying. I must go immediately. I hope things will turn around before I arrive." He looked at Illyrio, and the other's eyes were full of confusion, surprise and helplessness. This fat man always thought that he was the driving force behind the scenes, stirring up trouble between the Seven Kingdoms and the Dothraki, and it was a good experience for him to feel out of control and panic. Unfortunately, time is running out. Sig didn't have time to stay and appreciate Illyrio's panic. "I need to organize a small-scale cavalry of about 100 people. Set out in 2 days to find Drogo's khalasar. Your Majesty, do you know how much it costs to hire 100 elite mercenaries?" "Aye. You must do it well. If something goes wrong with Drogo's khalasar, your initial investment will be wasted. The 3 dragon eggs alone cost you countless savings. I only need to use the price of 1 dragon egg to form a mercenary cavalry. Don't talk nonsense, give me the cavalry in 2 days." Sig's eyes were aggressive. Illyrio showed a shadow of regret in his eyes. Chapter 68 Treatment of the Sheep Girl. Drogo sat in the Temple of the Landman. It was a square temple with thick mud walls and a spherical dome. It looked like a big onion from the outside. A pile of human heads were neatly placed beside him. This was proof of the warrior's bravery in battle. Whenever someone brought in a head, he would reward them and promise to treat them well when the spoils were distributed. His left arm ached slightly, as the broken arrow of the Landman had not yet been removed. The pain in his chest was simply heart-wrenching, but he endured it so that no one would see him frown. "My son and stars, you're injured." Dany came. She staggered off her horse and ran to him clumsily. Her face was full of astonishment and regret. She was worried. Warmth surged in his chest. Unfortunately, the pain diluted the warmth. "It's just a scratch, my moon and stars. It was done by Khal Drogo's blood riders," he told her in the common tongue. After all, she was not a Dothraki, and she was a woman, so she was inevitably weak. But it didn't matter. With him around, she didn't need to be strong. "I killed Ogo in the blood order." He shook his head proudly, and the bell rang softly. "This is Ogo's voice, and that's Fogo." He smiled and said, "When I killed him, he had just inherited the khalasar and became a Khal. I killed 2 Khals in 1 day. No one can resist my sun and stars." She said proudly, "He is the father who rides the world's horse." With the sound of horse hooves, a roaring warrior rushed into the temple. Koto stepped forward to stop him. The 2 people's quarrel-like conversation made Drogo realize that something was wrong. Is there anyone who is still resisting Ogo's khalasar? If so, they must attack immediately. It is extremely dangerous to let the roaring warrior harass the khalasar from the side. He will not make the same mistake as Ogo. Koto reported with a dark face, "He is Jacoko's man." He accused Khaleesi of stealing the daughter of the goat man he was riding. He looked back at Dany. "My moon and stars, please tell me the truth." He ordered in Dothraki so that the warrior could hear clearly. Although he didn't think Dany would rob others of their spoils, Jacko was the most powerful knight under him in the khalasar. Even he had to be cautious with the Khalas with 20,000 warriors. Dany told him everything that happened. He was short of breath, but he also understood that she did it because of the original custom. That's how war works. The sheep women are slaves and we can do whatever we want with them. I'm happy to keep them safe," she said persistently. From his understanding of her, Dany was delicate and beautiful, but surprisingly stubborn. This was also what he admired most about her. "If the roaring warriors want to ride these women, please be gentle, take them as wives, give them love, and give them the opportunity to bear children for you. Will horses mate with sheep?" Koto sneered and sarcastically said. "Horses and sheep are both food for dragons." Dany turned around and shouted angrily. It was the first time he saw her so angry. She looked beautiful when she was angry. "Look, how strong she has become. It's because of my son, the horse riding the world. She is full of fire." He made a decision. "Koso, beware. Even if Dany can't do anything to you, the horses of the world will make you miserable." He turned to the complainant and suddenly felt that this guy was very short-sighted. He dared to disobey my wife's request. It was a blessing not to kill you. As for you, shut up and find another sheep to ride. These slaves belong to my Khaleesi." He reached out to her, and the pain made him frown. "Where is the healer?" she shouted angrily, frowning her beautiful eyebrows. Her appearance made him intoxicated. "Why is no one healing Drogo?" The Khal asked the hairless to leave. Old Khal answered. Many warriors were injured. Drogo explained, "Let them get treatment first. This arrow is no more than a fly bite. The small knife wound will be a scar that I can show off to my son." Dany observed his injuries with heartache and sadness. He showed her proudly, declaring to him that these were all injuries for her and the child, and it was a man's pride. "The Khal cannot wait," she concluded. Drogo went to find the hairless man. "I want him here." She was angry again today. He was proud of her. If Dany had any flaw, it was that she was too weak. A weak person could not be in charge of such a huge khalasar with him. Now he was relieved that she would become irritable and powerful. Her growth made him happy. "Silver Lady." The old voice came from behind her. "I can heal the Great Horse King." The speaker was the slave she had just robbed, a fat woman with a flat nose. "Drogo does not need the treatment of the sheep woman." "Aga, cut off the sheep woman's tongue," Koto said angrily. Drogo glanced at the woman with contempt. She was wearing a light robe with intricate patterns woven on it. She should be a woman with status among the sheep people. "I really am no medicine," she said urgently. "What do you do?" Dany asked her. Aga could only put away the knife and retreat. Drogo smiled and patted the ghost's shoulder. His moon and stars were not so easy to get rid of. They should respect her. The mother who rode the world's steed was not something that ordinary people could offend. "My name is Miri Mazdor, and I am priestess of the temple," the flat-nosed woman said. "Witch." The atmosphere suddenly became gloomy, and Drogo regretted not letting a goat kill a woman immediately. Witches are dangerous and evil. They make deals with the devil, practice witchcraft, and sell their souls to the devil. "I'm not a witch, I'm a healer," the woman argued. "Kill her." Aga took a deep breath. "Let me kill the witch." "Where did you learn your medical skills?" Dany was stubborn. Just looking at her expression, she knew that she wanted to keep the witch. He hesitated a little. After all, witches were very dangerous. They used spells and poisons, and even the strongest warriors could be killed. "My mother was a priestess. She taught me songs to please the High Shepherd," the woman said. She was not panicked. This alone proved that she was not simple. "I made the ointment with leaves, roots and berries. When I was young, I traveled to Aga with a caravan to learn from the wizards. There I learned foreign healing. The moon singers taught me the songs of childbirth, the Dothraki women taught me Dothraki witchcraft, and the scholars from the Sunset Land helped me dissect corpses and taught me the secrets of the human body." "Why do you want to help Michael?" Dany asked again. She already believed this woman, he thought. "The High God asked me to heal the lambs." The woman was lying. He was sure he was not wrong. The problem was how to convince Dany she was about to trust this woman. "Witch, we are not sheep." Koto slapped the woman in the face. "Stop, don't hurt her. She is my slave." Drogo sighed. He didn't want his blood riders, who were like brothers, to conflict with Dany. They were all the most important people to him. "Okay, Koto, we should think of a way to deal with this arrow. Let her try." Koto retreated, his face full of indignation. Drogo considered giving him more compensation when distributing the spoils. "Great Horse King," the old woman said while covering her bruised cheek, "your chest wound also needs to be clean and mended, otherwise it will." "Hurry up, woman." He felt bad when she mentioned the chest wound. He was too arrogant. The hairless man should be allowed to treat the wound first. The woman gestured to go inside her temple to treat the wound. He pushed away the blood guard who was supporting him and stood up by himself. Blood flowed down the wound. He followed the woman into the temple without saying a word. Passing through the antechamber, he approached the lobby at the bottom of the dome. Under the dim candlelight, sheepskins were scattered on the mud floor. The woman asked him to lie on the altar. This was a large stone slab with a blue background, engraved with the pattern of shepherds and sheep. He lay down, and the woman sprinkled dry leaves on the brazier, filling the room with a strange aroma. She asked the blood riders to help hold down his hands and feet, then skillfully removed the arrows and sewed up the wounds. She applied a light green ointment to the wound on his chest and pulled the peeling skin back to its original place. The process was extremely painful, but he held back a scream. He must not let Dany see his weak side. Then she took out the needle and thread and sewed up his wound. After finishing all this, she applied red ointment to his wound and wrapped his chest with sheepskin. "You will have a fever and it will itch a lot. The wound will leave an ugly scar after it heals. Sheep girl, I am proud of my scars." He tried to use his arm and pulled the wound, which was piercing. "You can't drink alcohol or forget-me-not milk." The goat girl warned him, although it hurts, you must stay strong so that you can have the strength to fight the poisonous evil spirits. I am Khal, I can drink whatever I want. I am not afraid of pain at all. He had a bad premonition, but he couldn't find the source of the premonition. He subconsciously looked to the west, where something seemed to be issuing a warning. The pain of the wound forced him to divert his attention. It was time to check the casualties of the warriors. He remembered his responsibilities and strode out of the temple with his blood guards. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelas. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 69 by Lynn. 1. The hay covered with frost and snow flew backwards, and bushes and even branches would suddenly appear. It could always avoid them in time without slowing down at all. Lynn was very satisfied with this state. As it grew up and became stronger, the world became smaller and smaller, and the things that it had to avoid before were no longer so scary. It passed through a tree hole. The one that roared softly in the hole was a mother bear, which was also a dangerous creature for it. It had been chased by bears several times when it was a child. The huge claws, sharp teeth and bad temper were all dangerous signals, and it was necessary to avoid it. However, in recent times, as its body size gradually grew, its attitude towards bears also changed. It was no longer so afraid of them. They were clumsy, had poor brains, and most importantly, these guys had poor eyesight. Relying on agile jumps and constant changes at direction, it could easily avoid the bear's attack. It would be great if number 5 was beside Arya. It got along well with her, but the other brothers and sisters were not like that. They always avoided it. Lynn had an intuitive conviction that if she was with Arya, they would be able to hunt a bear together. Just thinking about it made it excited. The bullies that had previously dared not approached, now either bared their teeth or threatened it with their claws, and finally saw the big guys howling and whimpering. It could not imagine how a bear could whimper, but it was sure that bears would whimper, and all creatures in the world would whimper. Lynn was so sure. It passed by the bear cave, not really intending to hunt the bear cubs. If for no other reason, since number 5 was not there, it needed a wolf to attract the bear's attention so that it could get behind it, bite its neck, or attack its rear. It was galloping through the woods. Its target was right in front of it, a wounded female deer that seemed to be pregnant. It smelled her from a long distance, the smell of blood and amniotic fluid. It followed the sound. It was not hungry, but it was thirsty for blood. As long as it did not hunt for a few days, did not tear meat from living creatures, and was not sprayed by the blood plasma sprayed from broken blood vessels, it would feel uncomfortable and restless, and it would not be comfortable no matter how it stayed, until it entered the hunting state. It rushed forward, the doe was in front of it, and it could even picture the deer in its mind through its sense of smell. Beautiful eyes, smooth fur, and a bulging belly. There was something wrong with her hind legs, and she walked with a limp. Something else was approaching, and it smelled strange. A special stench that did not belong to any creature it knew. That thing must be trying to steal its prey. Nothing could take the prey away from its mouth, not even Jon. The ghost increased its speed again. It saw the doe, and just as it imagined, she was there waiting for it to kill her. It only needed to go around behind her, pounce on her, bite her neck, and spurt blood. Blood was the smell it most desired. It saw a strange thing, which seemed to be a person, but it did not smell like a person. The thing was very fast, and its skin was festering and dark, but it did not smell like a rotting corpse. His eyes were blue, and there was a coldness in the blue that went straight to the soul. It was not interested in him. Humans are weak and not tasty. Most importantly, biting them would irritate Jon. He never considered humans as prey. They were competitors, though weaker. The strange human stood in front of him, and the prey was about to run away. Ghost let out a low growl, which was his last warning before launching an attack. The human still stalked him, as if he was going to catch him. He rushed forward and bit the disgusting forearm. The human's skin was very soft and the bones were very brittle. With a slight tear, the forearm fell off. So strange, there was no blood. He was not sure if he really succeeded, maybe just a piece of cloth was torn off. Since he grew up, he rarely made such mistakes. He quickly backed away and spit out what was in his mouth. It was a forearm. It was so strange, there was no taste of blood. Usually, the absence of blood on a broken limb means that he is dead, but this human can still move. Time is running out, and the strange human is approaching. The doe is about to leave, and he can't wait any longer. Ghost opened his mouth as wide as possible, jumped up again and bit him, biting his neck, which is the weak point of all living things. The teeth penetrated the skin and muscle smoothly and reached the deepest part of the cervical bone. With a click, it almost bit off half of his neck. There was still no bleeding. His meat tasted terrible, with the smell of dust and soil. It tilted its head in confusion. Was he really alive? Suddenly, the strange human's other hand grabbed it. He had no temperature, and it felt like it was touched by ice. Bylin roared and tried to break free, but the strange human was so strong that it couldn't break free. Then the ugly face of the human approached, and he opened his mouth to reveal a festering tongue and twisted teeth covered with yellow spots. Bylin whimpered and struggled to wake up. "Where are you?" "Come here." It was Jon calling it. Bylin quickly ran out of the haystack and ran up following Jon's scent. It put the nightmare behind it, and the happiest thing every day was to be with Jon. "Let's go, today's the day for assignment. From now on, I will finish my training and become a real night's watchman. I will become a ranger, like my uncle, sharp and deadly." It didn't understand the complicated content of the words, but it knew that it was very happy and excited. It was also very happy and excited. They joined Jon's companions, including the chubby boy. Another human it liked. "Ghost, come and eat this, a little snack." Sam threw a piece of minced meat, and it jumped lightly and swallowed the meat in one bite. This is why it likes Sam. He always prepares food for it. A large group of people crowded in the square, and Jon and Sam joined in. Ghost drove away a drive dog and took its place. It curled up and lay there waiting for Jon to finish his work, and then, maybe he would be assigned to patrol missions, so that it could follow him around the high walls, where there were no animals on the ground, but there were more cunning crows. Ghost couldn't wait to catch a noisy little guy. Although they were not delicious, it cared about the hunting process. The guy called Bear Man spoke a bunch of incomprehensible words. Jon and the others cheered. Someone read something. Everyone was listening carefully. Bylin was tired of waiting, opened his mouth and yawned loudly, scaring away the local dog that wanted to get back at the place. By the way, he drove away another dog and a few cats. "You are all stupid trash. I will not treat you as I would today." Bylin thought so. It felt bad emotions. Jon seemed to be hit hard. He looked the same on the outside, but it could feel his discomfort. Obviously everyone else was very happy, and Fatty Sam was so excited that he seemed to jump up at any time. Why was Jon so sad? It vaguely remembered that when the person reading on the stage mentioned the steward, Jon was like this. Is the steward a tiring job or a bad food? He felt sad for Jon. After the long speech, Jon's friends gathered together happily, only Jon followed the blind old man listlessly. Bylin felt sorry for him. Seeing him reminded him of his brothers and sisters. Except for Nymeria, the others avoided him as far as they could, as if he was some kind of evil spirit. Sometimes they would unite to attack and expel him. It was unfair, but they had to accept it. Jon was the one who was expelled. Soon Sam came to Jon. They talked for a while, and Jon felt better. This was another reason why Bylin liked Sam. Sam didn't forget to bring him minced meat. The fat boy always thought of him. They got a mission, not to patrol but to leave the high wall and go outside. Go to the forest outside the high wall. Its nightmare seemed to be coming true. Bylin couldn't wait to run out. It wanted to go to the place it dreamed of yesterday to see if the doe was still there and whether the weirdo had left. It could smell Jon and the others staying under a tree with a human face from a distance. Bylin went to confirm last night's dream with confidence, and maybe it could get some blood and flesh back. If the doe was still there, it planned to drag her back, and Jon would reward it. It felt strange to move forward along the route of the dream instead of following the smell. The doe had indeed left, but the weirdo was still there. Bylin approached the weirdos cautiously. There were two of them, lying motionless on the ground, looking like corpses, but he knew they could still move. He instinctively wanted to leave, but was stopped by the anger in his chest. The weirdo must pay the price for causing him to lose a doe prey. He turned to the side of the weirdo, launched an attack, and bit off his forearm again. The taste of the forearm was like soil and dry branches. He decided to go find Jon. Maybe he would know what was going on with the weirdo. Chapter 70 Bylin. 2. Gods, what are you holding in your mouth? Ghost realized from the reactions of the crowd that something was wrong. It quickly put the broken arm in front of Jon and hid behind him. It prayed to the wolf god not to be implicated, because it was the weirdo who provoked him first. Fat Sam screamed and fell to the ground, and the others were also terrified. It was ready to fight at any time. The worst did not happen. Jon hugged it and scratched its neck. Good boy, take me to where you found him. Ghost called to him softly, and Jon understood what it meant and drew his dagger. The people around also drew their weapons. It led the way to find the weirdos in the forest not far from the Great Wall. The horses did not dare to approach. They neighed, rolled their eyes, and trembled uneasy. Ghost whined to show his contempt for the tall animals. It continued to move forward and heard people dismounting and cursing. The weirdos were in front of it. It was already familiar with their smell, the smell of cold soil and dust, which was not at all like the dangerous smell of corpses. Jon was so surprised that he couldn't speak. Several other rangers were also stunned, and then turned to fear. White Ghost realized that the weirdo was even stranger than he had imagined. "He is Sir Jeremy Lake announced, and that is Jeffrey Flowers." He kicked the weirdo over roughly. White Ghost looked at the weirdos curiously. Their faces were pale and their blue eyes were wide open. Why didn't they move? They were obviously very strong. It had experienced their strength in its dreams. It was always on guard. Both of them were Benjen Stark's men. They are good rangers. Benjen thinks highly of them. Rangers. White Ghost pricked up his ears and turned his head to look around. It remembered that rangers should have horses. The weirdo was a ranger without a horse. Jon didn't look normal either. His expression changed constantly, as if he was grateful, or as if he was afraid. Gods have mercy. The bear guy came and got off at Plow Horse. The bear guy was hot and smelled of sweat. The Plow Horse was also a coward. It was very embarrassed, rolling its eyes and pulling the reins desperately. Ghost rushed over and bared his teeth at him, and the horse calmed down. Jon scratched its neck, and Ghost whimpered with enjoyment. It was worth all the hard work to get his reward. The beast trainer Bess and his short dogs were a joke. At first, Bess held a severed hand for the stupid dogs to smell, but the short dogs went crazy. They barked and screamed, trying desperately to escape. It was Ghost who took action and severely punished a few stupid people who ran around, and they calmed down. Even so, the short dogs still roared and wailed from time to time, which made it annoying to listen. Helped Beast discipline the stupid people and gut meat bones. Rushed back to Jon. It was very worried about Jon's condition. Jon was very depressed. He was like this last night. Ghost remembered that he was yelling on the bed, so it had to jump on the bed and rub his face with its mouth, and it also had a nightmare. "I am a member of the Night's Watch, not a child anymore," Jon said to himself. After comforting Jon, it continued to take care of another person who needed it. Fatty Sam curled up under a tree, hiding behind the horses. His round face was like sour milk that had been poured out. He looked around, but he didn't dare to look at the direction of the weirdo. "I don't dare to look, I really don't dare to look," he repeated in a low voice. "You can't help but look." Jon rushed to his side and said in a low voice, "You are Master Eamon's eyes. If you close your eyes, they will be useless." "That's what I said." The fat man trembled in fear, "But I'm a coward." Jon grabbed his shoulders and looked at him. "There are 12 rangers here, a group of hounds, and Ghost." When Ghost heard his name, he rubbed over at the right time and rubbed Sam's fat hand with his nose and mouth. "To be honest, this feeling is really not good. This guy sweats a lot. No one can hurt you. Go and take a look. The first step is always the hardest." Sam turned around to look at the body. Jon grabbed his hand to prevent him from turning around. Ghost used his body to block the fat man's retreat. Not far away, Bearman and Jeremy started arguing. It seemed that the rangers failed to find the bodies of the two people early. Ghost didn't understand. It was too complicated. Jon joined the discussion. In the end, the special word White Walker appeared in the mouths of these humans. The air froze. The stupid guys seemed to be scared by their own words. "The body is still fresh. The death time cannot be more than 1 day." "No," Sam said sharply. He scared Ghost, who thought that the two weirdos finally moved. Sam squeezed over. He was sweating profusely. Ghost smelled the sweat on his body and wrinkled his nose. "My lord, no. It may only be 1 day. Please see that there's no blood on the body." He fainted when he saw blood. A ranger said this, causing laughter. Everyone here laughed, except for the two guys lying on the ground. They were not dead, so why didn't they laugh? Could it be that they didn't understand? "Sir, look," Sam wiped the sweat from his forehead. "Look at the place where Byling bit off." Byling turned his head curiously. It was rarely mentioned in human conversations. "There is no blood at the port. My father used to force me to watch him deal with prey." As if recalling something horrible, the fat man's chin trembled non-stop. "A fresh corpse, the blood is still there and will flow, and then it will coagulate into lumps and become jelly, very thick jelly." Sam's face turned pale, and Byling stared at it. What they said was too complicated, it couldn't understand. Why do humans always scare themselves and often make themselves sick? Their roaring methods are too diverse, and the effects are really weird. This man's wrist is very brittle and dry. The blood vessels in his muscles are like worms, and his blood has turned into black powder. If they have really been dead for more than a day, they would have smelled terrible, but now there's no smell at all. The old man Dobbin quietly approached the weirdo and sniffed. Well, it doesn't smell good, but it's not a corpse. Byron finally understood what they were doing. These humans are simply unreasonable. How can something that is not a corpse smell like a corpse? It barked like to express its mockery, but unfortunately no one paid attention to it. The humans continued to stay with the weirdo for a long time. Finally, the bear ordered the corpse to be dragged away, and Byron was able to leave with Jon. On the way back, it caught the escaped female deer. Its belly was deflated, which should be completed, but there was no fawn beside it. Something must have happened to make the female deer abandon its child. It gave her a quick death. After biting the blood vessels in the neck, the deer blood sprayed all over its head and face, turning it into a red wolf. Back inside the high wall, the atmosphere of the humans was strange. Everyone looked at Jon, and Jon also looked very strange. He kept scratching his neck. He was very scared, and Ghost approached him and acted like a spoiled child beside him. Ghost smelled the smell of dirt and dust, and the two weirdos were placed in the storage room of the bear man's residence. It didn't understand why humans did this, and it was not a good idea to let two guys stay around. Ghost stood up and wanted to use actions to signal Jon to follow, but unfortunately he seemed to be troubled by something and didn't notice it. Jon left, and Ghost wandered around the Black Castle alone, snatched snacks from the two short dogs, and heard words like king, Prime Minister, rebellion. These were all things in the human world, and it didn't care. After completing the routine patrol in the castle, he returned to his residence and waited for Jon to come back. This wait was a long time. Until Sam came and took it to the bearman's residence. Jon was locked in a separate room, and Ghost approached him and sniffed him. My father is not a traitor, he said to it. It looked at him quietly. Jon hugged his knees with his hands. It knew that this was the posture of humans when they were sad. It stayed beside him silently, paying attention to the smell of dirt and dust approaching from the basement. Something was wrong. Ghost heard the movement and smelled the smell of death. The black guard outside was killed. When the strange guy approached the guard, he died. Human relationships are complicated, but killing does not happen often. Something must have happened. He scratched the door with his front legs. Ghost, what's wrong? Jon finally woke up. It turned its head and showed him its teeth. It didn't roar. It instinctively realized that it should be quiet at this time. Ghost, it's me. Jon didn't seem to understand what it meant. It stepped back from the door and let him see the marks it had made with its claws. There's someone outside, right? He finally understood. Ghost let out a long sigh. Sometimes humans are smart, but most of the time they are stupid. Every time, it takes great pains to make them keep up with it. It crawled back on all fours, making a pounce gesture. Jon ran to open the door and saw the black guard lying limp in a narrow while, his head up and his stomach down. His head was twisted off. Chapter 71 Great Change. Myrcella had never thought that Maegor's Holdfast was gloomy, except for this time. This fortress hidden deep in the center of the Red Keep was surrounded by 12-foot thick walls and a dry but spiked moat. Sir Boros Blount was guarding the other side of the drawbridge, his white armor looking gloomy and terrifying in the moonlight. Going further in, passing two King's guards, Sir Preston Greenfield stood at the top of the stairs. Seeing her come in, he bowed deeply. He deliberately avoided her sight. She turned her head to seek comfort around her in confusion. Without Violet by her side, she could not find courage and encouragement from her. Myrcella almost cried. She bit her lip and told herself that she was the sword dance princess and would not cry over trivial matters. Was her father's injury really a trivial matter? He was so strong, so tall in her eyes that he looked like a giant. He never got sick, and when she was a child, she even thought that he would not grow old or die. Sir Viserys Targaryen was guarding outside his father's bedroom. His face was as pale as his armor. He was her father's most loyal and valiant guard, the fearless Barristan, and it was generally believed that as long as he was there, the king's safety would be infallible. Today she did not have that confidence. The butler opened the door. Her Royal Highness Princess Myrcella Baratheon, he announced loudly. My little Myrcella is here, her father called out, his voice so muddy that she could hardly recognize him. In the fireplaces at both ends of the bedroom, anthracite burned red. The room was filled with a gloomy red light. She secretly thought that this color was similar to blood, the same blood she had seen in the streets of prostitution, ominous and cruel. The heat in the room was suffocating. She almost collapsed to the ground, relying on her willpower to rush to the bed. He lay on the bed with curtains, and Master Pycelle was beside him. Uncle Rennie paced anxiously in front of the bed. Servants came and went, either adding hot coals or warming wine. Her mother sat on the bed, close to her father. Her hair was as disheveled as her own, and she was wearing an unmatched jacket. She had never seen a mother like this. She was always well dressed and superior. "Come here, dear, I hope your smile and care can bring strength to your father," her mother said softly. Her eyes looked over Mycella's shoulder and stared at the door. Was she waiting for someone else? Her father's feet were stretched out of the blanket, still in boots, covered with dirt and hay. His favorite coat was thrown on the ground, with long tears and shocking reddish-brown dirt on it. The room was filled with the smell of smoke and blood. She knew this smell, the same as when she was in the streets of love. It was the smell of death. "Little Mycella, come closer to me, there's nothing to be afraid of." His face was as pale as milk, and he came closer. Mycella didn't know any medical skills, but she could see how badly her father was injured. She wanted to ask, but the words were stuck in her throat. "A damn wild boar." Uncle Renly said weakly. He was still wearing hunting clothes, and his cloak was covered with blood. "It's a damn demon." Her father hissed. "It was my own mistake. I drank too much and lacked aim. I deserve to go to hell." Mycella wanted to question what everyone around her father was doing. She wanted to question Uncle Renly, Sir Barristan and the other king's guards. Weren't they supposed to be by her side? Why did they let a wild boar hurt her father like this? In the end, all that came out of her mouth was a sigh, and the resentful question of why did it happen. She was so lame. She had vowed to be a strong female knight. "My brother ordered us to stand aside so that he could deal with the wild boar alone." Uncle Renly seemed to have heard her thoughts and defended himself. Mycella was conflicted. She wanted to lift the blanket to see what was going on, but she didn't dare to. The coagulated blood had changed the shape of the blanket, which showed how badly he was injured. Her mother stepped forward and gently held her hand, which gave her motivation. She gritted her teeth and lifted the blood blanket. The blanket was so heavy that she needed both hands to lift it. This was a blanket made of Dothraki cashmere, which was light and warm. It only took one hand to lift it. They had tried their best to sew it up, but the effect was obviously not good. That boar must be a monster. The long tusks tore his body apart. The wine-soaked gauze that Master Pissel used to bandage was stained with blood. The smell from the wound was enough to make people faint. Mycella almost vomited, and she let go of the blanket. "Don't look at it, my little darling, this is the smell of death. It's stinky, isn't it?" sighed the father. Mycella held back tears and shook her head desperately, as if this could make her father feel better. "I am miserable this time, but I didn't make it feel better either." The father's smile was as amazing as his wound, and his teeth were blood red. "I poked its eyes out. You can ask them if it's true." "Okay, Robert, you're confused. There's no need to tell the child this." The mother scolded lightly. The mother was panicked, and she saw fear in her eyes. "Why?" "The mother must be unstable because of excessive sadness. It must be like this." I brought it back to prepare for the dinner. The father didn't seem to hear what the mother said. Maybe his mind was really confused. Someone came. "What are you all doing?" Lord Ned came. He ran into the room in a robe. The father stuck his head up with difficulty and looked at Lord Ned. "Let us be alone for a while. You all leave. I want to talk to him." "Robert, dear," the mother said with difficulty. She had never seen her mother so panicked, so at a loss. I said, "Leave." Her father turned back into the king who was rude to her mother. Mycella was sad, but helpless. "Which word don't you understand, bitch?" The mother gathered her skirt and self-esteem and led the way out of the room. Mycella followed out, and before the door closed she heard, "Get out, you old man, I'm going to die soon, get out." Her father scolded Master Pissel. She felt a little better. It must be the wound that made her father in a bad mood, and he was not just targeting our mother. She hoped that this judgment was correct. In the end, her father did not summon him again. It is said that he called Master Pissel in and gave him forget-me-not milk. With a depressed mood, she returned to her room. Everything became different and she didn't know what to do. She could only hope to wrap herself in the quilt, and when she woke up the next day, someone would tell her that everything was a dream. After changing into pajamas with the help of the servants, Mycella, who was in a trance, refused the suggestions of taking a bath and styling our hair. She wanted to hide in the bed curtains as soon as possible, the world of dreams. "I'm sorry, but there are some things you have to do." Mycella almost fell off the bed. Her mouth was covered and she could only whimper. When she struggled to turn around and tried to fight with the villain, she saw that it was Violet. Tears could not stop flowing. Regardless of anything else, he hugged Violet for a long time and did not let go. The cold and hard palm patted her back gently, as if treating a crying baby. "Oh, my lovely Mycella, don't cry." For a long time, there was silence between the two. Until her emotions calmed down, Violet asked her to sit on the bed. "My dear princess, what I am going to tell you is cruel and unbelievable, but you must listen carefully and do as I say. Joffrey is rushing back to King's Landing, and what we have to do is to prepare before he comes back. Will father die?" Violet's vision became blurred, and she couldn't tell whether it was because of tears or some other reason. "He will die. My lovely child, the facts are cruel, but you have to face reality." There was something special in Violet's eyes that scared her. She didn't want to listen, but she had to. She wanted to hold her head and scream, but found that the sound was stuck in her throat and couldn't come out. "Robert Baratheon is not your father." Violet's first sentence made her forget to breathe. As the sword dancer uttered what came out of her mouth, she suddenly didn't recognize this world. The familiar bedroom also became strange and weird, like a devil's lair. "I know this is hard to accept, but you have to accept it and help us." Violet reached out to Myrcella, and she subconsciously grabbed it, as if a drowning person found a life-saving raft and was unwilling to let go. Chapter 72. Afterlife. With trembling hands, Pycelle handed the thick white liquid to Robert. "Your Majesty, this is forget-me-not milk." He took a breath. "Please drink it, it will relieve your pain." This old man looked like he could die at any time, but 3 kings were gone, and he was still alive. Now he was about to die, and the old man was still like nothing happened. Robert knew it was unfair to think so, but he couldn't help thinking. The bad luck he encountered couldn't be caused by this old man. He waved the cup away with the back of his hand. "Get out, you old man, I won't be able to get up from my sleep soon, get out." The master left with a hurt look and staggered away. "Robert." Ned's eyes were red, so he knew he was a brother. Robert thought with relief, "Were you too reckless?" "Duh. I'm still your king, have you forgotten the proper etiquette?" The pain from the wound blurred his vision. "Damn the stench, the damn cold, it's so fucking uncomfortable, I should kill you. Can't you let me live in peace for a while? I can't even hunt in peace. Sir Robert came to me and complained that he wanted to chop off Gregor's head, but I didn't tell the hound and let Tricelle scare him." He was halfway through laughing when the pain came and he almost screamed, "Gods have mercy." He exhaled and inhaled deeply. "That girl, Daenerys, is a child, you were fucking right. That's why I get retribution. It's so fucking timely." He coughed up blood and pain. "It's so cold. I was wrong. I shouldn't have done that. Their eyes, Littlefinger, and the other important ministers are all trash. Only you dared to say no to me. Only you." The pain made him exhausted. He almost wanted Ned to chop him. "Bring paper. Write down what I said." He rummaged around for a while. "Your Majesty, please give me instructions." "Bullshit instructions. You're still giving me this at the end of the day." Robert didn't have the energy to scold Ned, so he could only gasp. "Damn it. With the title of Robert I of the Baratheon family, screw the Angles and the others, I'm about to die and still have to be bound by them. Just write it down for me. You know whose words they are." He was in so much pain that he saw stars, but he wasn't sweating. His body was shivering with cold. "Damn it, didn't they light a fire? What a horrible weather." A point entered, the Duke of Winterfell, of the Stark family, as the regent and protector of the realm. After his death, he will manage state affairs until my son Joffrey comes of age. He had never been so tired in his life. He felt that all his diligence in life was used up. "Robert." Damn, Ned was hesitant to speak again. This guy always hesitated to speak. Most of his life was delayed by hesitation. "What else do you want me to write?" "Just write it the way it should be written. Obey, protect, the old and new gods, anyway, it's a bunch of nonsense." His strength was draining away, and it was getting darker around him. "Let them light the lamps. The Red Castle is not so poor that it can't even light the lamps. This is the taste of dying." He still remembered the first time he killed someone. He forgot the damn guy's name. Anyway, he was a nobleman and dressed very gorgeously. He swung the hammer and broke the guy's shield. The hammer had hit his breastplate directly. I guess all his ribs were broken. He was about to launch the final attack. The young man, with blood foaming from his mouth, shouted, "Wait. Ha, wait, I can't wait for nothing." Now he finally knew what it felt like to be dying. The wait was not directed at him. "I'll sign it after I finish writing it. Submit it to the Royal Council after I die." This was his last bit of strength. After saying this, the heavy burden on his heart was over, and he felt relieved. "Robert." Ned cried like a woman, and he didn't even have the energy to complain. "Don't do this, don't leave me, the country needs you." He wanted to laugh but couldn't, and he didn't have the energy to laugh. He could only use his last bit of strength to hold Ned's hand tightly. "You won't lie." The damn pain came again. He really didn't want to live anymore. What kind of a wretch am I to this country? I am a tyrant like Ares. Gods forgive me. No, Ned cried again, Your Majesty, you're different. You are much better than the Mad King. He forced a smile, warmth overflowing from the corners of his mouth. At least people will say that I did one thing right in the end. Joffrey will leave the country today. Have you written it? The corners of Ned's mouth moved, as if he said something. Robert lost his hearing in the pain, and he signed randomly, leaving bloodstains between the lines. Remember to serve wild boar as the main course at the funeral. He couldn't hear, but just kept talking, afraid that he would never be able to speak again if he stopped. Put an apple in your mouth, the skin is baked crispy, and give it to me. Promise me, Ned. He couldn't hear Ned's answer, but hoped that he really understood. That girl. He couldn't finish his sentence, realizing that he was really about to die. Let her life, her eyes or Littlefinger. And Joffrey, let the sword dancer teach him, let him be better than me. He almost fainted from the pain. Gods have mercy on me. He closed his eyes, maybe because of relaxation. It didn't hurt much. In the end, he was killed by a wild boar. Fucking ridiculous. He murmured. God, why is it so cold? He couldn't remember what happened next. He just felt vague. The coldness increased, and the taste of forget-me-not milk. He sank into the pillow and fell into a deep sleep. In his dream, he became younger, and became the Robert on the Trident. He wielded the warhammer and was invincible. The enemies were endless, and in front of the warhammer, all enemies were no stronger than ash. Until he met Roeber, the ruby of the three-headed dragon gleamed on his chest. Bastard, how many times have you died? He swung his warhammer furiously, the ruby shattered, and Roeber fell in front of him. He walked forward and stepped on the sunken chest with one foot, and the world was spinning. He opened his eyes and saw a huge wild boar standing in front of him. His blood was all over the ground, and his green intestines were also out. His strength was draining away, and the surroundings were getting colder and colder. While he still had some strength, he pounced on it, ignoring the intestines flowing out. The wild boar fell down. In the pool of blood, a beautiful woman was lying there, wearing a purple winter snow rose wreath. She turned her head and looked at him quietly, as if she was saying something to him. Robert gasped. He stopped swinging his warhammer. Lyanna smiled quietly, her face overlapped with Roeber's. He shouted no. In a cold sweat, he sat up, and his wounds were still painful. His strength was back. The torches were swaying, and a group of strange guys stood in front of him. Stannis. What are you doing here, you bastard? Is it so funny that I'm in such a state? He cursed. He saw Myrcella, the sword dancers, and the fully armed soldiers. It took several heartbeats to comprehend the situation. When he realized that he had passed the critical moment of life and death, he was even more surprised. Am I dead? What kind of hell is this? It's not scary at all. He looked up at everyone, and finally his eyes fell on the woman in red robes. Who are you? What happened to these people? Are they dead too? The red-robed woman smiled at him. The night is long and silent, and there are abysses everywhere. The woman said something incomprehensible. Father. Myrcella said only one word and choked. You're dead, brother, and the world below is mine. Stannis said coldly. He was still like a piece of iron without emotions, which make people feel sick. Your Majesty, to most people in the Seven Kingdoms, you're already dead. We saved your life now, so please cooperate. The sword dancer said politely. He was getting more and more confused. I'm sorry, I don't know how it works specifically. I was ordered to save people and announce your death. The sword dancer looked sincere. He didn't believe this was a conspiracy, because this woman gave people that feeling. She was the farthest away from conspiracy. The wound was still twitching, and the pain continued, and it was no longer unbearable. You are the most tenacious human I have ever seen. Ordinary people can't survive even with my help. But I must tell you that Robert Baratheon is dead, and you will live on the wall as a night's watchman. Chapter 73a. Game of Thrones. 1. The thundering sound of hooves woke Joffrey Baratheon from his light sleep. Morning light streamed into the room through the window. He jumped up from the bed and dressed himself in a few seconds. Under the astonished gaze of the servants, he walked out of the bedroom quickly. At the window at the corner of the stairs, you can see fully armed warriors wearing bright red cloaks practicing. These people are either fighting with swords or riding horses to chop down straw dummies. The Hun galloped on his horse, crossed the hard mud, and pierced the dummies' heads with iron spears. Cloth and leather armor shattered, and straw flew. His fierce attack attracted laughter and curses from the soldiers. Joffrey looked up in the direction of the Prime Minister's tower. Lord Eddard Stark was standing there watching. This was deliberately done for him to see. Joffrey was very dissatisfied with his mother's behavior. This is not a game, it is ridiculous to scare the Prime Minister in this way. He returned to King's Landing late yesterday. Before parting with Sig, he was told that something big would happen in the Red Keep and he had to be there. To his surprise, the so-called big thing turned out to be his father's death. He didn't get to see his father for the last time. He rushed back to the Red Keep and immediately went to his father's residence, but he saw a dead body. The room smelled strong and the bed was covered with blood. His father was lying in a pool of blood. In the hot weather, there was a fireplace in the room. The servants explained that the king kept complaining about the cold in his last moments. Joffrey had seen dead people and knew that blood loss would make people feel cold. His father must have been frozen after losing so much blood. I tried my best. Master Pycelle said tremblingly, I have never seen anyone with such a strong desire to live, but he was injured so badly. It is said that a wild boar took advantage of his father's drunkenness and gave him a fatal blow. He had no way to evaluate such a result. Was Sig right? Was everything controlled by the gods behind the scenes? If it was really an intentional accident, even the gods could not forgive it. Joffrey had no time to grieve, he immediately went to see his mother. The relationship between his mother and his father had always been bad, so it was not surprising that she did not cry. Dear Joffrey, you must mourn and face reality. His mother's eyes, as if facing an enemy, puzzled him. He blinked his eyes. He did not have too many feelings for his father. Since he could remember, his father had never done anything other than hunting, drinking, beating and scolding his mother. Now that he had encountered a huge change, Joffrey wanted to take on the responsibility of protecting his mother, brother and sister, but he found that his mother was much stronger than he thought. There were red cloaks everywhere. The guards of the Baratheon family were sent to an unknown place. He wanted to help, but was rejected. His mother just asked him to go back to his room to rest. Beside his mother, Master Pycelle was energetic, as if he was 20 years younger. The captain of the capital's guards, the commander in the gold cloak, smiled. Even the hounds were left. Only he was excluded. He was very hurt, and in order not to show it, he had to pick up the mask of arrogance again and put on an arrogant look. It was really lame. He thought so, and pretended to be indifferent on the surface. The guards turned into 2 red cloaks. Questions arose in his heart. Wasn't he from the Baratheon family? Why was he protected by the guards of the Lannister family? Riding all the way back to the back room, he also noticed other things that he had not paid attention to before. For example, the family emblem on his body was not a crowned stag, but a crowned stag and a roaring lion. Would the roaring lion replace the crowned stag in the future? He quickly discarded this idea. His mother would not hurt him. This idea was simply condemned by God. A black shadow appeared at the intersection. Since the battle in the Mountains of the Moon, he has been extremely sensitive to any movement in the dark. The 2 red cloaks, although they looked majestic, were not alert at all. He reached out to touch the battle axe, but touched nothing, and then remembered that the battle axe was left in the bedroom. Long live the Red Castle. He always felt that this title was strange. He urged the warhorse and drew his longsword. When the warhorse rushed in front of the black shadow, the other party didn't even have time to turn around. The warhorse stood up, and the longsword slashed down like a thunderbolt in the clear sky. Ah! The scream startled him, and he spent more effort. In a moment of chest tightness, Joffrey finally put away the sword. Asshole, do you want to die? 2 Lannister guards finally reacted and rode over. The one who was frightened was Sansa, the eldest daughter of Lord Stark, the girl who was destined to be his wife. Joffrey never had any feelings for Sansa, and he only had violet in his eyes. Your Highness, her little face was pale, and Sansa did not forget the etiquette. He wanted to get angry but couldn't. Her face was covered with tears, obviously not just because of this shock. Reaching out to stop the 2 red cloaks, he noticed that Sansa was going out alone without anyone accompanying her. This was against the rules. Although the Red Castle was very safe inside, the Duke's lady would not go out alone. He turned over and got off the horse, taking this opportunity to calm down. To be honest, the girl showed up at a very inappropriate time. He was in a mess now, and he really didn't want to get involved in her affairs. She was still a child, and he was already an adult. My lovely lady, it's so late, is there any trouble for you to be alone? He said perfunctorily. Sansa's big eyes flickered, and she was about to cry. Your Highness, I will not be able to see you anymore. I really don't know what happened. May the gods have mercy on me. Her tears were real, but unfortunately he did not resonate. After witnessing the battlefield of life and death, he no longer thought that love between men and women was so important. Of course, the relationship with Violet was an exception. What he wanted to see most now was not Sansa, but his swordsmanship teacher. You are so cruel. You are indifferent to hearing that I am leaving soon. Do you know? Since I knew that my father was going to secretly send my sister and I out of King's Landing, I have been unable to sleep or eat. She said to herself. What he thought was that this was not bad, at least there would be no one to stand between them and Violet. Lord Stark had always looked at him strangely, probably because his marriage with Sansa and his admiration for Violet were seen through. Why did you go out so late at night? He asked politely. I went to see the Queen. She listened to me kindly and gave me advice, asking me to persuade my father. She cried again when she said this, sobbing, but she didn't understand how stubborn my father was. Not only did he want to send me back, but he also revealed in his words that he didn't want you to marry me. Oh, this was the first time Joffrey heard this news. He didn't care. In a sense, it was good news. Okay, dear Sansa, Lord Stark must have misunderstood me. I will try my best to express my feelings to him. After all, you're the Duke's daughter. Please don't do anything against etiquette. Maybe he has a talent for drama. He obviously has no interest in Sansa, but he is attentive and thoughtful. After persuading her, he let Sansa ride his horse and walked on foot with the horse. Fortunately, the Prime Minister's tower was not far away. He tried hard to joke and finally made the little girl laugh. The entire Prime Minister's guard was dispatched. Their captain Jorah was nowhere to be found, and was replaced by a chubby guy. Just looking at his eyes, you can tell that this man is not good at fighting. The Northern Guard seemed surprised that Sansa was with him, and they separated the two rudely and arrogantly. Sansa seemed to be very shocked and kept apologizing, but Joffrey didn't care. It would be better if they were rude to him, so that he would have a reason not to approach her in the future. The unexpected hostility of the guards helped him solve the problem in his heart. Joffrey was in a good mood and prepared to go back to find Violet. He wanted to see her and had a lot to ask her, but he was afraid to see her. The complexity of his mood was indescribable. In this eventful time, with so many things to think about, the anxiety in his heart almost made him crazy. Wait. Lord Stark's voice came from behind. Although he didn't want to be involved with this family anymore, Joffrey still reluctantly turned around and put on a smile. Respected Prime Minister. He bowed his head and saluted. At this time, especially when your father's body is still warm, you are in the mood to go out for a walk and chat with your little daughter. His tone was very aggressive, and his eyes were full of hostility. Joffrey was asked inexplicably. It was obvious that your daughter ran away by herself. No, I ran away by myself, and Joffrey didn't know. Sansa cried and defended him. He was really grateful to her, but her crying at this time had the opposite effect. Lord Stark's eyes became sharper. The situation is chaotic. I just came back from traveling. I originally had a dispute about your lady and my uncle that I needed to tell you. Since you are very busy, I think we can talk about it later when we have a chance. Being scolded for no reason, he got angry and had a revengeful mentality. Mother and grandfather must be annoyed about uncle's affairs. Since you treat me like this, I might as well let the situation get worse, so that you can also feel the anger of the Lannister family. The Duke hesitated. You shouldn't be here. I gave you a chance. The Duke began to say some inexplicable words, which made him confused. I suggest you go back immediately and pack your bags with the Queen. The Duke sighed, with a look of compassion. He didn't understand. He was a prince and his mother was the Queen. Even if his father died, he would be the king. Why did he pack his bags and leave? Is this the so-called crew? Thinking of this, he grasped the hilt of the sword. His mind turned quickly, and he couldn't help but break out in a cold sweat. Uncle Ed, you were my father's friend for many years. He wants to seize power before his body is cold. The sound of the long sword being unsheathed continued, and the Duke's expression did not change. Joffrey could hardly imagine what kind of idea made the Duke rob the foundation of the orphan and widow with a compassionate mood. In the end, Duke Ed stopped his guards. There is no point in saying more. I will give you one more night. Please don't live up to my kindness. Chapter 74a. Game of Thrones. 2. I fail you. Joffrey was furious. This is the most hypocritical thing I've ever heard. Everyone says that Lord Stark values honor over life. I finally see your honor. The Prime Minister's guards dragged Sansa away by force, and Lord Stark still looked at him with his hypocritical face. Joffrey gritted his teeth and turned his horse's head. Even if I die, I will not back down. He wanted to find Violet so much, but unfortunately the situation did not allow for waiting. The sanctimonious Lord Stark actually wanted to seize power and looked like he had a sure win. He had to go and warn his mother. They must not sit and wait for death. With two panic-stricken red cloaks, he rode his horse on the street. Time was running out. No wonder the Duke let Sansa leave King's Landing, no wonder he opposed the marriage. It turned out that the noble Duke of the North had other ideas. He couldn't believe it, but he had to believe it. He ran all the way back to his mother's bedroom, which was also brightly lit and the red cloaks were waiting solemnly. Without waiting for the guards to report, Joffrey rushed into the hall. The layout here shocked him. The magnificent and elegant furniture was removed and replaced with a long table and a deduction platform. All the vassals of Casterly Rock and King's Landing were present, and the knights and lords all looked stern. They seemed surprised by Joffrey's intrusion. Before she could ask him, "Mother, something happened. Lord Stark wants to betray us. We must act immediately." Mother looked at each other with the others. "Little Joffrey, what did you find?" "Why do you say that?" Joffrey told them what happened on the way, so Mother and all the lords, Lord Eddard is obviously prepared. He gave us one night to leave. There is no doubt that if we are still in King's Landing tomorrow, we will be in trouble. I suggest uniting the lords in the city, especially the nobles with knights and guards. If necessary, I hope that the city garrison can be dispatched. Also, let Myrcella and Tommen leave first." Mother stretched out her hand to stop him from continuing, and she smiled. Grand Maester Pycelle on the side kept shaking his head. He smiled and said, "Your Majesty." Could it be that Pycelle was old and confused? He actually used the wrong title. "You are indeed a worthy king. We are discussing the issue of Stark's betrayal. As you expected, the problem is extremely serious. The Queen Mother did not want you to worry about it, so she did not tell you. I didn't expect that your Majesty had already found out the truth himself." What was Pycelle talking about? Joffrey looked around carefully and found that the Queen's bedroom had become a command center. "We should act immediately, and call Uncle Renly. I remember that he has hundreds of elite warriors and can be a great help. Your Majesty is indeed wise, but you are still too young." The short man who walked in from the door was the Minister of Finance, Duke Baelish. "Respected Queen Mother, and your Majesty, I have already grasped the exact movements of the traitors, and we can make arrangements calmly tomorrow." His mother and others were overjoyed, but Joffrey was a little puzzled. "What did I miss? Why do you say I am too young?" Baelish's great green eyes seemed to be able to see through his mind. "Your Majesty is wise to find out about Lord Stark's conspiracy, but you are too naive to want Renly's help." Joffrey noticed that he did not add a title to his uncle, and his words were contemptuous. He was speechless for a moment, not knowing how to respond. "My dear child, you are very brave, and this trip has changed you a lot, but you are too kind and don't understand the evil of human hearts." The mother, who was promoted to the Queen Mother, said solemnly, "You must obey my arrangements. Tomorrow is the day that determines your fate. If you succeed, you will ascend the throne, and Myrcella and Tommen will enjoy lifelong wealth. If you fail, we will all be doomed." He felt the eyes of the crowd, and some of them even had expectations in their eyes. He didn't know how to respond, and he just felt the blood boiling. The next morning, Joffrey was dressed. Although his mother had repeatedly asked him to wear the king's formal robes, he insisted on wearing armor. Armor could not be made overnight like robes, so his armor was much more shabby than the fiery red cloak. The metal background was shining with a bright silver. Thanks to the efforts of the blacksmith, this bright silver reached the point of being able to reflect people. The pattern of a crowned stag playing with a lion was hung on the armor in the form of ornaments and fabrics. His helmet was held by the hound, ready to be taken to the battlefield at any time. At his mother's insistence, he gave up his usual battle axe and instead wore a gorgeous but dull half-sword as a weapon. On the other side, the Lannister Red Robe guards held an iron-clad round shield as a protective gear. All the Lannister and Baratheon guards were summoned early in the morning. He and his mother were surrounded by a crowd and waited in front of the throne. Intelligence from the Tower of the Hand was constantly being sent in. For the first time, Joffrey knew that his mother had such a complete intelligence system. He had heard about the importance of intelligence in war from Violet and Sig, and prayed that the Starks did not have similar intelligence agencies, otherwise their chances of winning would be much smaller. Although surrounded by soldiers and fully armed, he was much less confident than when he was in the Mountains of the Moon. There was no Sig here, and the opponent was the Northern Guard who assisted his father in seizing the throne. It was said that the warriors of the North were extremely elite. With the same equipment, one Northern soldier could resist 10 warriors from the 7 kingdoms. Joffrey always sneered at such descriptions. No matter how powerful a swordsman was, even if the Dragon Knight was reborn, it would be impossible for him to fight 10 people alone, not to mention that a mere Northern soldier would be chopped into pieces when facing 10 times the number of warriors from the 7 kingdoms. Having said that, he did not dare to really underestimate the Northern warriors. At least he could fight 1 against 2. He thought uneasily that although the Lannisters had many warriors, could their number really exceed twice that of the other side? What if he failed in a close combat? He was confident that he could fight his way out of the battle. But besides his mother, there were Myrcella and Tommen. Could he let everyone back unscathed? He missed Violet more and more. If she were there, he wouldn't be so passive. If she was there, he could declare victory in the battle. Greetings to His Majesty Joffrey I of the House Baratheon and Lannister, King of the Andals, the Rhaenyra, and the First Man, ruler of the Seven Kingdoms and protector of the realm. The Bolter chanted loudly. What's going on? He could understand Joffrey I of the House Baratheon, but why did he have to include the Lannisters? Lord Eddard Stark came towards him with his ministers and a large group of soldiers. Although Joffrey was mentally prepared, he was still nervous. The damn Iron Throne was getting more and more uncomfortable. He held the hilt of the sword, but was worried about other things. The Iron Throne was full of blades and spikes, and he was worried that the fabric on his clothes would be scratched. Then he shook his head and smiled bitterly. It was such a bad time to be deserted. It was not unfair for him to be killed. 3 King's guards blocked Lord Stark. They were guarding the base of the throne in an arc formation. They were fully armed and dressed neatly. Their long white cloaks fluttered behind them and their shining shields were tied to their left arms. He glanced at his mother. She was wearing a silk robe with mirror lace embroidered on the hem. She had an emerald ring the size of a robin's egg on her hand and a golden circlet on her head. He confirmed the position of the hound. Samba was fully armed. His smoky gray armor and ferocious dog-head helmet made him look dangerous and ferocious. He held his helmet under his left arm and stood proudly. In addition to his northern guards wearing mail and gray cloaks, Lord Stark also had a large number of gold-cloaked guards fully armed. A sense of strangeness rose in his heart, and Joffrey lowered his head to hide the expression on his face. The Duke and others stood in front of the King's guard. He met his mother's eyes, and stood up after being encouraged. I order the Privy Council to prepare for the coronation ceremony at full speed. He announced that everything was so unreal. I hope to complete the coronation within 2 weeks. Today I will accept the oath of allegiance from the ministers. He emphasized his tone and stared at Lord Stark with a sharp gaze. Although he knew it was slim, he still hoped that the Duke would be able to stop at the brink. He didn't want to see Arya's father involved in the rebellion. Although this man was sanctimonious, he dared not imagine the consequences of exposing him in the crying faces of the girls. Lord Stark looked at him with a complicated expression. Lord Varys, please take this letter to the lady of the Lannister family. The Duke's wording was strange. He ignored Joffrey and negotiated directly with his mother. Joffrey blushed and was at a loss. Chapter 75a. Game of Thrones. 3. The mother glanced at him, protector of the realm. A hint of sarcasm appeared at the corner of her mouth, which was her best expression. Prime Minister, do you want to seize power with just a piece of paper? With an ominous premonition, she tore up her father's suicide note, and the fragments scattered all over the floor. Joffrey's eyes widened. He couldn't believe what he saw. This is my father's will. This is the king's will. Sir Viserys Dan was shocked. We have a new king. The mother said easily, as if the king was a toy on the baker's oven that could be replaced at any time. Lord Eddard. Her expression was sharp. He had never seen a mother like this. The last time we met, you gave me some advice. Now it's time for me to return the favor. A thunderous roar came from the mother's shrill voice. It was the first time he knew that a woman could make such a sound. Kneel down. Stark. Kneel down and declare your allegiance to the new king. I will allow you to resign as Prime Minister and return to the Grey Waste to enjoy your old age. I hope to go back too. The Duke's eyes were extremely cold. Joffrey sensed a cracking sound, as if glass was shattering. He couldn't tell clearly. This feeling came from his heart. Joffrey has no right to inherit the throne. Lord Stannis is the legitimate heir. Although he was mentally prepared, he was still shocked to hear his words. He expected the Duke to say something violent, such as if there were any kings, princes, generals, or ministers. But he never expected that his purpose was to send Stannis to the throne. Putting aside personal likes and dislikes, no one wanted their uncle to be king, no one. The commotion echoed among the crowd. No one discussed it loudly, but the undercurrent was indeed surging. People stared at him, as if they were staring at an imposter. Why? Blurted out. He realized that he had made a big mistake. He shouldn't give the enemy a chance. This would spread lies. But he just wanted to know what reason Lord Stark had to deprive him of his inheritance. There is no reason at all. He has no basis. A voice in his heart said so. But he didn't dare to assert it, because reason called out in his heart. Lord Stark was not that kind of person. Since he didn't want to sit on the throne himself, there must be a special reason. Stark, you are courting death. The mother's tone was not harsh, but her words were heavy. Sir Barristan. Take down this traitor. The mother gave the order again with a thunderous voice. Barristan shook his head in confusion. In the blink of an eye, he was surrounded by grey cloaks. You just want to usurp the throne. The mother mocked him. Do you think Sir Barristan is fighting alone? With the sound of the long sword being unsheathed, the King's Guard and the Lannister guards also drew their swords. Joffrey was the only one on their side who did not show his weapon. Something went wrong. He wanted to know why he had no right of succession. Kill them. His mother screamed, kill them all. Joffrey wanted to stop it, but he didn't know how. His eyes quickly searched behind him. The Hun would listen to his command, but others would not. The Grey Cloaks couldn't either. What's wrong with the Gold Cloaks? Shouldn't they stand on his side? Or are they just watching? You leave me no choice. The Duke said sadly. He was like a good old man who was about to do something he hated, his face full of sadness. He turned his head and signaled the commander of the garrison. Commander, please arrest the Queen and our children, but do not harm them. Send them back to the royal room and assign someone to guard them. This situation was too strange. It shouldn't be like this. Lord Stark looked like he didn't want anything to happen, and why was his mother so angry? Everything was related to that reason. Lord Stark emphasized that he had no right of succession. Capital Guard. Janos Slant shouted. As he put on his helmet, the Gold Cloaks lowered their spears and began to form a battle array. Joffrey forced himself to stop thinking. The movements of the Gold Cloaks were difficult to predict. He did not trust this frog-faced man. If something happened, he had to protect his mother. The Lannister guards hurriedly tied his shield to him with a half-drawn sword. I don't want unnecessary bloodshed. Lord Stark shouted, tell your men to put down their weapons, and there will be no. With a scream, the spear pierced through the chest of the captain of the Prime Minister's guards, blood splattered, and the man's sword slipped from his hand. Before the sword hit the ground, the man was dead. Sterling sneaked up on a northern knight in a despicable way, and the latter was cut in the throat. One of the Duke's men splashed a sword in front of him, forcing the Lannister guards to retreat. He sidestepped the Gold Cloak's thrust, but failed to avoid the Hound's slash. The first sword cut off his wrist, and the second sword split the man from shoulder to sternum. No. Lord Stark's eyes turned blood red, and he drew out his sword called Ice. At this time, Littlefinger just pulled out a dagger to harm him, but was knocked down by his elbow. You traitor. Stark looked like a madman. Ice was extremely sharp. 2 spears were cut off in one swing. The sword continued to move, and he knocked down a Lannister warrior by the way. He was too close to his mother. Stop. This is an order. No one listened to him, and Joffrey stood up helplessly in front of Lord Stark. Ice turned into a storm of swords. He held the narrow area tightly, only defending but not attacking. The round shield broke after only 2 slashes and was unusable. He could only use half a sword to block, trying to avoid the edge of the sword as much as possible, and defending by losing strength. The Duke's power was terrifying, and the sword was not fancy but very practical. After only 3 encounters, his arms were numb and he even had difficulty lifting them. The palm of his hand holding the hilt was cracked, and blood flowed. He gritted his teeth and concentrated on resisting the Duke's attack. There was a clear sound, and he knew without looking back that it was Violet. Only her long sword could be so spiritual. The gleaming white sword light took over his pressure. Joffrey hurriedly retreated. He was sweating profusely. He could no longer hold the half-sword, and let the broken half of the steel sword fall to the ground. You are almost killed. The Hound came to him and was on guard. He saw praise in the Hound's eyes, but you did a good job. You can fight back and forth with the Mad Lord Ned. You can already be among the ranks of famous knights. Ah! Eddard Stark screamed, and a black spear pierced his left foot. The gorgeous sword light dissipated, and Violet immediately left the circle. The Duke used ice to support the ground and stood up with difficulty. His eyes were so sad and unwilling. You bastard, you clearly promised me. His eyes were pointed at Pet Arabelish. Didn't I warn you not to trust me? Littlefinger teased while being surrounded by Lannister warriors. My lords, today I really saw the most exciting Game of Thrones. But the intrigues, assassinations and deceptions in it make me want to vomit. Joffrey stood beside Violet and said to the ministers and his mother, I don't want the killing to continue. If you want to leave a good impression in the future king's mind, please show mercy and treat all the wounded as soon as possible. He signaled the Hound to stand behind him with his eyes. You two, and you and you. He pointed to 2 Lannister warriors, 2 King's Guards, and a gold cloak. Come with me, let's stop the massacre from continuing. My dear Joffrey, the struggle for power is like this, if you don't win, you will die. The mother wanted to say something, but he stopped her with his hand. He stretched out his right hand with a broken knuckle. Seeing his injury, the Queen lowered her head. If you don't win, you will die. I understand that, but I want to remind you and everyone who is still alive. He sternly glanced at the entire hall. Now I have won, and I have the final say on the following rules. I don't want any more blood to be shed. He swung his right hand fiercely, and blood spilled all over the floor. Looking at Duke Stark, who had fainted on the floor, he sighed. Now, immediately rescue those who can still be saved, and send them to my bedroom for custody. I don't want to see anyone die in my bedroom. He turned to look at the two people he trusted the most, and gained recognition from their eyes. They had not agreed on this beforehand, but they had such a tacit understanding. Let's go and stop the massacre. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.